Good morning and welcome to today's meeting of the Scrutiny Commission. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. Today we've received apologies from Mr O'Shea and Mr Smith is attending as his substitute, and we've also received apologies from Mr Robinson, but we don't have a substitute for him. Before we begin, can I please remind everyone to turn on their microphones when you wish to speak or are invited to speak. So on to item 1. The first item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of June, pages 3 to 10. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 2, question time. I have received one question from a member of the public, Mr Stairs. And the question and my response has been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. This has also been published on the Council's website for public information. I'd like to remind members that there is no discussion held on this. Mr Stairs has advised that he has a supplementary question, and so he has joined us online. Good morning, Mr Stairs, welcome. So before proceeding, can I remind you that your supplementary question should be to clarify the reply you've been given and should not raise any new issues. So if you'd like to go ahead with your supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Yes, so the answer suggested that the council was procuring an outside audit or a kind of review. So I just wondered if that was standard practice or is that something that's new for this year, and also how much the council expects to have to pay for that external review.
So just picking up those two questions, it's standard both in this council and other councils to get outside bodies in to do a review. That said, this is a new review. It's not a continuation of anything from previous years, so this is a new review 2025. In terms of how much the review is expected to cost, it's currently out for competitive tender. So until those tenders come back and are evaluated, we won't know how much the cost is going to be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Stairs, for your question. You're obviously now welcome to remain in the meeting, or you can leave if you prefer.
Thank you.
On to item 3, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7. I've not received any questions. Item 4, I have no urgent items. So on to item 5, declarations of interest from respect on the agenda. Does anyone have any interest they wish to declare? No, nothing. Item 6 is declarations of the party whip. Do any members wish to declare the party whip? No, nothing. OK, and on to item 7, presentation of petitions under Standing Order 36. I've not received any petitions. So on to the main substantive item 8, the first one. So this is the medium-term financial strategy, budget monitoring and strategy update on pages 11 to 12, but we've also received a supplementary that was circulated to members on the 3rd of September and was also published on the website. That is the main report that we're looking at today. Simone Hines, Assistant Director of Corporate Resources, will be introducing the report, and she's joined by Declan Keegan, Director. The lead member for Finance is unable to join us today, so we're joined by the leader, Mr Harrison. So welcome, Mr Harrison. So Simone, please go ahead.
Thank you. So the first section of the report details the position for the current financial year, and it shows a forecast overspend of 8.1 million, and that is based on trends at the end of July and then forecast forward, assuming that those trends stay the same. There's two main drivers of that overspend. Firstly is children's social care placements, currently forecasting around a £10 million overspend. That's due to both an increase in the overall number of children that we currently have in care, but particularly more children in residential care. That is the most costly type of provision that we have to provide and can often cost several thousands of pounds per week. Secondly, we are seeing continued increase in demand for special educational needs provision, and we are forecasting a deficit of £45 million this year. Now, we did budget for a deficit as we have done for several years, but the budgeted deficit was 15 million, so there has been a significant further increase even compared to that budgeted deficit. That's largely because we've had about a 25% increase in the number of packages, the number of EHCP packages that we've got in place at the moment, and that's an increase since last year. Whilst special educational needs provision is funded separately from the dedicated schools grant, that is significantly underfunded at the moment and is placing a strain on sort of wider council finances. And members might recall that there is a statutory override in place which allows the council to keep that deficit off balance sheet and not have to deal with the funding implications. That is only temporary. Government have extended it until March 28. But it does urgently need to consider how those deficits are going to be dealt with when that override ends. The council has got a strategy of making a partial provision towards that deficit so that it does have some provision for when the override ends, but it's not at the level of the total deficit, which will exceed 100 million by the end of this year if that current demand continues. This also puts strain on the council in other ways. So we are cash flowing that deficit, so it does impact on lost investment income, and we are also expecting a knock-on impact on Send Transport potentially, as well as those children that receive those packages also require transport as well. Given that those two issues are the most significant pressures at the moment, the Director of Children's Services is looking at options to manage that demand. And I think there's actually a scrutiny workshop on Send in a couple of weeks. Just aside from children's and Send, other council services are operating largely within budget, and we do have increased investment income and some reduced inflationary costs, which are helping to mitigate some of that overspend. We also do have an £8 million risk contingency that we include in the budget. We haven't yet allocated that because it's still quite early on in the year. The focus is on managing those overspends and identifying underspends and other mitigations. But we do have that provision that does give us some comfort over the year. Then if I just turn to the next section, which is the capital programme, and you'll see that is largely on track with the approved budget. There's just one exception where we have an emerging pressure on school places programme. So that's the programme to provide additional school places, either by new builds or extending existing schools. The shortfall is there's a combination of reasons for that, but one of the most significant is a change in the DFE methodology of grant funding, which has led to a shortfall there. We have identified funding for immediate priority projects, which is included in this report, but there is a larger unfunded amount that we're still reviewing, but that will need to be considered as part of the next budget report when we bring the draft budget through to December. And just as a reminder as well, we do have a shortfall in the capital programme over the next 4 years, and any further pressures in that school places programme is just going to make that shortfall worse. Okay, so then just move on in terms of the MTFS section, which is towards the end of the report. This looks ahead at the update of the medium-term financial strategy and also the budget process for 26-27. This is particularly difficult at the moment because we do have lots of moving parts. We've had the spending review announced in June, and then the fair funding consultation. That was issued in June and does set out potential changes to the way that funding is allocated across all local authorities. Details are really high level at the moment, but it does appear that county councils generally have fared better than we might have expected from those proposals, but they are only draft. They could be subject to change. I'm obviously aware there was some political changes over the weekend that may impact on that as well. So it will need to wait until much later on in the autumn before we get a clearer picture about the impact on the council, and particularly the finance settlement, which is normally released just before Christmas. Also worth bearing in mind, I think that there is likely to be lobbying from other parts of local government as well, because London and districts particularly don't do very well from those proposals, and we imagine they will be making their case, so there's a lot that could still change with those proposals. I think either way, though, we don't expect the impact of fair funding or the spending review to significantly improve council's finances, especially given some of the pressures that you can see in the report around social care and Send. So we are continuing to focus on delivering the existing savings targets we've got in the MTFS, and also focusing on accelerating further savings under development. We have last week issued the tender for an external efficiency review as well, which will be a comprehensive review of the council's current cost base and looking for further opportunities to identify savings. We are expecting to be able to award that tender towards the end of October, and we will bring a further update back on that, probably alongside the budget proposals to this committee in December. That's probably all I need to add on the report itself, but happy to take any questions.
Can I just clarify one point before I go up to questions? You just mentioned about the schools budget being pressured, the normal dedicated schools grant, as well as the high needs block. So will we be overspending on the schools budget as well? Can you just clarify?
So it's the capital, it's the schools places capital programme where we've got a shortfall in funding for the provision for new places.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, members, questions? James?
Thank you very much for the presentation, Simone. Just got a question. I mean, in terms of perhaps more for the leader, but for anyone that can sort of contribute and help. In a recent social media post, the lead member for health, Mr. Squires, said that the administration is cutting waste and not services and making huge savings. Can the leader confirm that services will not be cut? And would he be able to identify what those huge savings are and give us a little bit of detail on that, please?
I can confirm that we have no intentions to cut services. There's a lot of complication. We're looking at a budget that's your budget, and it's absolutely shocking. I did indeed, but I also fought hard to bring some reduction. It was 72 million in my day of trying to avert what we now have before us, which is disastrous. Massive MTF out of control. Special needs isn't quite so much, it's a problem, but I mean, you didn't create that problem, that's happened itself, but the managing the budget is all down to you. So it is bad, something has to happen, we can't carry on with this, and we can't carry on with the idea that tax is high and cuts are plentiful. So that's my rebuttal to that, and my statement is shocked, appalled at what we're seeing in figures, and it is absolutely awful. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Harrison, I should have come to you before I went to members. So is there anything else you want to add before I ask for further questions?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman.
So obviously that sort of indicated that the budget was horrendous and you've been left with a mess. Can you pinpoint some of those things that you found that are indicating that that was the issue, please?
Well, that's in due process. We will have people coming in to investigate how we operate, to look at the efficiency and how it can be best managed. So, you know, we've had efficiencies in services before because all existing members would remember the TOMS programme, which was 10 million saving in adult and communities. So there's a lot of work got to be done. So it's just impossible to preempt anything at this stage other than welcoming this programme coming forward.
But you just said in your opening response to James that there was issues with the budget that you've identified. So are you able to give some examples of those issues that you've identified within the current budget that you're operating under that are mistakes?
I prefer not to mention any detail that may reflect on what's going to happen. The budget is there, anybody can look at it. There's lots of people who have their own opinions and views of the budget. So it would be out of order for me today to try to start pinpointing. There will be people advising and guiding, and I think that's the appropriate way to do it. So to say less at the moment might be plentiful in time, and it's silly to comment on stuff that may not be that way when the review starts and it happens. But it will be meaningful and it will have in-depth revelations and guidance for us, hopefully, to go forward. And I'm trying to be helpful, but I can't go beyond that.
You've not really been helpful because you actually made the statement yourself just now. So you've obviously got to have based that statement on some information. So at least give us one example of what you've seen.
I'm not prepared to open a door at this stage while there's people tendering, and it's important. I don't want to create any problems going forward. That's where I am. Anybody could see, I've got colleagues sitting here today who may want to ask questions. I know the inside track from what I know, but why, when I've got people coming in who will know and understand it far better than I, and I wait to hear their comments and recommendations. But standing aside, I can see that it is fairly serious and bad, the situation we're in. And I think anybody can see that. You don't have to be clever to see that. You've heard Simone's very accurate synopsis of where we are this morning. So that's where I am. But it is awful. It is absolutely awful. And it needed some sort of adjustment some time back. And I did try to make an adjustment, but it wasn't acceptable. So I leave it there. The experts will come in, they will do their job correctly, they will brief senior officers and myself, and we will know where we're going to be able to make a sensible decision backed by authority and authoritative views.
So you just mentioned there that you found £72 million worth of alterations that you want to do to previous budgets. So can you give us an idea of what areas those were included in, so we can get some idea of where your thoughts going? My
thoughts was just looking at the MTFs. It's as easy as that. You've looked.
You need to pinpoint what, you can't just say the MTFS. You just said £70 million.
Yeah.
So what areas were you looking at to get those 70 million of savings, to give us some indication of where you're going?
Not at this stage. Not at this stage. You may snigger and smile, but it's out to tender a document, and people will be tendering. And for me to make statements that could prejudice that, I'm not prepared to do it. Thank you.
So I get you don't know. Right, Craig.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, basically, I'd just like to highlight a fact again that the lead member for finance is missing again, but I would like to thank Mr. Harrison for standing in for her. Can you also confirm that back in May you made lots of promises on your election material that you would be cutting tax? Is that still standing, bearing in mind the report that we've just received? And you mentioned as well that you've got people coming in. Are you not confident that you've got the skill set within your own administration to make these savings and produce a balanced budget? Thank you.
Thank you. Our intention is always to have low taxes. Still on that platform, I stand by it today. Our intention is to bring in a strategic review, which is happening, and that will be able to tell everybody where we are and what we're doing and everything else. So we believe in low tax, but low, reducing costs where we can to the public, and it's as simple as that. The real work will be done when these people come in who spend a career doing the work they do, who are specialists in that field, to be able to come in and review and see where we are. And I think that's the answer.
Okay, thank you, Leader. You've not actually answered. I said, do you have the skill set within your administration to produce a balanced budget? I didn't ask whether these people were qualified to do so, although I do have misgivings about that. So could you answer the question, please?
Yeah, indeed. These are external, so they have a different viewpoint to people who are here. We have excellent officers, good at their job, but this is very specialised to be able to do what's got to happen to review it. So in simple terms, yes, the decision is made. Yes, it's out to tender. Yes, by November, we could have a team on site. And it's as simple as that. This isn't ridiculing anybody. This is about bringing in people who do it night and day as a big industry at high levels. So these are people who are very accustomed to doing it day and night, what they do. And it's a lot easier for them to come in who have those specialist skills. Our officers are very specialised within all their own departments. So it is a different thing.
Okay, so bearing in mind that you've not answered the question for the second time, do you have the required skills within your administration to produce a balanced budget? Not externally, within your administration. And also, I think every member around this room, no matter what political stripe colour we wear, we all would like to have the aspiration of lower taxes. we wouldn't get elected if we wanted to put taxes up. That's not anything that anybody in this room would want to see. You specifically said on your literature, bearing in mind that you were on the previous administration, you knew exactly the financial position we were in, but you still said specifically that you would have tax cuts, not the aspiration of tax cuts, tax cuts.
Correct.
Do you still stand by that?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. Thank you.
I know you've sort of said that you can't say anything and it's all secret and all that sort of stuff about the eternal commissioning, but they are consultants that you're looking to bring in that will have a cost to the local authority. Can you just confirm that there will be a cost because they're external consultants?
I can confirm there'll be a cost, Madam Chairman, but couldn't discuss it any further because it's a live tender document.
So also you went out condemning the previous administration for using consultants to operate this council. So why are you now following that same path?
Well, no, I'm not sure I can remember condemning, but there's a lot happened over the last 2 or 3 years in your old organisation
That you were part of.
that I was part of.
Correct.
But I was the one who wanted to see cost cuts and I was rejected. So it's as simple as that. I stand firm on my belief and I believe that cutting costs is essential moving forward.
Well, I've asked you what those cuts were that you wanted to bring forward and you haven't been able to give me any information. So you're happy to pay, considering the position we're in, for consultants to come into this local authority, you're happy to spend taxpayers' money on those consultants?
They will give us a synopsis right at the beginning of the process once they've looked, and then there will be a negotiation. It's as simple as that.
But there will be a cost for them to come and look.
Yes.
So you're happy to spend taxpayers' money on a consultant to come and look?
To get the cost reductions that we're looking at, most certainly.
Okay. Phil?
Mr. Harrison, thanks very much for showing up today. As Mr. Smith said, it's a shame that the lead member for finance isn't here, but I understand other things crop up.
Could I just say, sorry, Madam Chair, it's been mentioned twice, she's on holiday. So,
well, that's what I said, other things crop up. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So, but I do hope the lead member for finance will be here at the next meeting in later on this year. So just picking up what you just mentioned, Mr. Harrison, at the previous meeting back in the summer, you announced that, so let's just roll back a little bit. Back to the election, your National Party leader made a lot of comments about something called Doge, okay, whatever that is. And you, when we asked you that question back in the summer, you said you weren't getting Doge in, you were going to appoint some consultants, and the officer, Simone, has just mentioned that there's a tender process. I'm still not very clear how much money we're going to, has been allocated for this management consultants to come in, but just listening to what's been said about the timeline, if the tender's only going to be finished by late October and the consultants will be appointed maybe to start in November, maybe late November, that's incredibly late in the budget making process of this authority, given that we have to find potential savings, efficiencies as you put them, or cuts that you've identified but don't harm front-end services, in time to bring forward for our budget approval meeting in February. That doesn't leave very long at all to bring forward anything substantive. Now, what you just mentioned is a strategic review. Now, that's something that's very, very different, I would have thought, in scale and content to the sort of thing that you initially were talking about and your national leader was talking about, which was efficiencies. So what I'm just trying to understand from you is, you know, if these management consultants come in, are they actually going to have enough time to actually deliver any meaningful program in time to go through the democratic decision-making process here at the council scrutiny and all of that in time for the budget. And I just wonder, if you've got any thoughts about that at all.
Yes, it has took time to sort of go through this journey, but we've been working hard for a long time for this. We believe that it will be appropriate and it will be most helpful to us. I can't go into great detail because, as I say, we're still at this tender stage. So not ever say helpful, but confident that it can have an impact enough to us to be able to make decisions of importance.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison, that hasn't really given me any clarity whatsoever on what I just asked you. I asked you if you think that the programme you're appointing these consultants, do you, as the leader of the county council, believe that there is sufficient time to develop a programme of savings between late November and the middle of February? Because
I'll make it easy this time.
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
I'll make it easy. Yeah,
go on, then.
Yes.
You think there is? Okay,
yes,
that's what I want. This is what we're looking for. Answers, Mr. Harrison,
yeah.
Not waffle.
Well, Madam Chairman, I object to his behaviour and attitude. I've known him a long time, and his behaviour is not nice. Ask the question. I'll do my very best to answer it.
Thank
truthfully.
you. Thank you.
But yeah, all right.
I mean, we're here to scrutinise, so we're expecting answers.
I don't mind that.
And
I quite enjoy it.
You're not really answering any of the questions, so I think we're within our right to keep answering the questions.
If I may, Chairman, I'm grateful for Mr. Harrison giving a direct answer rather than the one before that. So if I can just carry on, Chair, if I may. So, Mr. Harrison, this isn't just numbers on a page. Behind them, there are real families, children in need, vulnerable adults who can't be left without support. Now, what is very clear to me from reading this MTFS, and it doesn't really matter how we got here, the fact is we're still the lowest funded county council in England. We've had massive increases in SEND. We've had a massive increase in demand and costs for looking after children, all those things. Some of those things, there's nothing we can do about it. But what I'd like to understand further now is what have you done since the 2nd of May to make representations to government, to the MHCLG and the Treasury, to ask them for additional funding support for Leicestershire? Because it is really important, and I know my colleagues in other groups are very keen on this, as are we, but I'm just trying to understand what actions have you actually undertaken to make representations on behalf of Leicestershire County Council and the residents and service users that we do to actually ask them for support towards covering off the MTFS shortfall, because we're looking at 39 million for next year based on all the known knowns and unknowns at the moment, and that's an awful lot of money. And just if I can help you a little bit further, last week we sat in a meeting here, Adult Social Care, and the officers went through a programme of potential savings, which they couldn't put a number on, and they understood that, but that's taken 2 years to work that programme up. So I just go back to my first question to you, which you answered, which you said you believe savings can be identified in 3 months and delivered, and yet I've just identified to you a programme which is underway at the moment, which is very complicated and it's taken 2 years to develop and bring forward, and even now they're still not entirely clear how much money it's going to save. So I'm just trying to understand how in 3 months you're going to deliver what previous administrations worked years in, and we had delivered, but obviously there's still a significant gap. So I'm just wondering what magic thing you've got that we didn't have. Thank you.
Well, Madam Chairman, there's nothing magic in it. It's professionalism. It's understanding there's problems, understanding that whatever's happened over the years isn't adequate enough to be able to meet the wave of costs that are happening around us. So very confident that we can do this, very confident that the decisions we make will be the right and appropriate ones. Regarding government, we wrote to all the MPs seeking their support, and that didn't go down too good. So at the end of the day, we've got to take initiatives ourselves. We can't sit here forever shouting at government because they ignore us in any event. On most occasions, we have to take initiatives and say, this is in our hands, as it was in yours. It's in mine today, and I'm determined that what we do will be successful and will be a benefit for the people who are recipients of service. It will be benefit for the public at large through our actions. That's all I'm saying. This is your budget I'm sitting and looking at. You'll have to wait for our budget, and then you'll be able to see the differences, but you'll know before then there will be differences. There has to be a change. Can't carry on like this. It's ridiculous. We're going to get overwhelmed to the point where we wouldn't be able to sustain it. Something has to happen, and it's as simple as that. And I will keep you informed fully. As soon as we're able to say things, we will. There's no cloak, it's professionalism. There's live tenders. It's been appropriate for it to be happening without me confiding in you. There are things happening, and we're expecting change. I've got an idea of some of it, but I will not talk about it at the moment. But I feel absolutely confident what the professionals have said to me, and I feel, yes, we will make change, and it will be quite dramatic, and it will be very, very successful, because these people do it all over the world for other companies, so they know what they're doing, and I have confidence whoever wins the tender will be the appropriate people for us. Thank you.
We look forward to that. Okay,
Indeed.
Mr. Walls.
Thank you very much, Chair. I again, not to sound like a broken record, I do want to come back to the council tax because it was a hot topic on the doorstep. And when I campaigned back in May, there was real optimism that somehow council tax will be reduced. And as members have said, that's something we'd all love to see. I just don't see how it's possible. And one of the few mitigations to this financial black hole we're facing is raising council tax. Every council, whether it be borough, district, county, that is the only option because government have underfunded all councils for so long. So council tax has been the one thing that is some sort of mitigation for that. But by saying you're not going to increase it even minimally and actually reduce it, I fail to see how you can provide the same level of service. And looking through your cuts later on, there's examples from small things like asking schools potentially to pay for crossing guards, which doesn't sound much, but I know from my own schools that I talk to, their budgets don't even extend to paper and pens in most circumstances. And then we've got slightly bigger ones like getting rid of Bow Manor Hall, which is a huge place where children across Leicestershire go to. It's famous. It's part of our identity, and I'd hate to see that go for the next generation. My own children actually are still using that at school. And then finally, other things that we have to go surely are more significant. And we just had an example of that from Mr. King when it comes to the things that were said yesterday, like reducing substance misuse services that I think would be awful if they were lost. So how do you marry that up by saying you're going to cut one thing without reducing service? It doesn't add up. And I'd just like some clarity on that because it was such a big topic. And I'm sure some of your colleagues over there won seats because of promises like that. So I'd just like some more clarity on that because I can't make that add up in my head. Thank you, Chair.
Some of those cost reductions that you're talking about has been enabled by officers moving forward. We're still a business. We've still got things happening. So that's happening, but we've got something else to happen where I can categorically say that our intention is to reduce council tax, protect frontline services through an efficiency that is going to happen that will enable this. Unless we do that, we'll be just swamped. Something has to happen.
Dr. Bloxham. Okay. Mr. Poland, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as councillors, politicians of all sorts, obviously have ideology, and we have to balance ideology with responsibility, pragmatism, some might say. I, as Mr. Smith said, I agree. I would love to see lower taxes. I didn't join the Conservative Party to increase taxes, and if it was possible to do, I would be fully on board with the leader on that. But as someone that spent the better part of a year in the cabinet and obviously in the same briefings for many years before that, including on this committee, we know the financial difficulties that this authority faces. You've outlined that in response to my previous questions. So for me, my question, I guess, is you're also very clear. If I can say, you were very clear to Mr. Smith in your response when you said that in the leaflets you said you will lower tax, and you confirmed that kindly today that we will be seeing lower taxes in the budget. How does that then marry in terms of the responsibility to the future of Leicestershire County Council? Like you, I think I'm a conservative, and I would like to see families, individuals have more money in their own pockets. But
I'm not a conservative.
With a small C, sir. Right? Unless you're not. But you know, certainly, if you like me, you'd like to see individuals keep more money in their pocket. Then I would like to see that. But if that comes at the cost of this authority, sort of the future of this authority, we're already talking about was £91 million by 2029 in the budget. We're looking at more than that now as a result of the report today. Do you prioritise, I guess, ideology, the idea that we, you know, as a matter of principle, people should pay less tax and keep more money in their pocket, over the pragmatism and responsibility to the future of this authority? So would you cut tax even if it threatens the long-term future of this authority, because you think as a point of ideology, that's what's important? That's my question.
Thank you. It's a good question as well. Thank you for that. No, the aim is the efficiency will give us the wherewith to be able to say, yes, we can look at council tax, we can look at the overall efficiency and make sure that we protect frontline services. That's been a comment of mine in everybody that's turned up, that I've interviewed with officers, is whatever happens, we're running a business, and that business must continue. And our business is about service to public who are in need of our services. So trust me, that will not cross that line. We're here to improve things, not damage things. And the county council going forward is imperative in my mind, the security and the ability to do it. And that's why I believe in unitary authority for Leicestershire going forward, because I think it's so important. This organisation is about 95 years old. It has vast experience through the people who are working in this organisation, and I believe it's imperative that this organisation succeeds from where we're going forward.
Thank you for that, leader. So just so I'm clear then, you have been very clear today that you won't identify specific savings or measures or anything specifically within what's going to be coming through the budget. But can you just clarify then that when the budget comes forward, the savings that will be identified in the budget will be equal to or greater than the amount of money that would be raised through a council tax increase? And can you further confirm that that will happen without cutting services, which again was an election promise by the Reform Party?
Our policy has always been low council tax, and that's what we'll adhere to. Our policy is service to the people, so that will be maintained, and the efficiency going forward will drive us into that position where we'll be able to do those things. Can't do it where you're doing it. been tried and tried for 24 years and nothing happens. Council tax up, services cut. This is different, and I believe this is achievable because we're talking to the people who have those skills, and it's vital that they have these exceptional skills, and that's fine. So I'm covered off on that. The pledge is simply this: we're going to work to lower taxes for the people, as well as create efficiencies, give us the wherewith to do that, always looking after people who need our help and our services. That's absolutely spot on. We will protect services.
If you could, you can try.
Yeah.
So slightly more generally then, is it the case that when we get the budget in whenever, end of the year, February, whenever, that the budget will include tax cuts, which you've said to Mr. Smith will happen, but will include efficiencies that will offset the difference? So the authority, or greater than the difference. So the budget will be better in terms of the future stability of Leicestershire County Council. Leicestershire will be more stable going forward than it would be with tax increases.
Yeah.
Is that the case? So we're going to see tax cuts and with savings that will offset the difference. So we'll be a net better off than we would be if the tax increases went up.
That is our whole intention to do.
Declan, I don't want to put you in a difficult position, but obviously you're the section 151 officer and you have to sign off the budget. Can you see that we can deliver a balanced budget next year with council tax cuts, in your professional opinion?
We're obviously at the start of the MTFS process, so there's an awful lot of information still to come through. So, for example, funding reform, which is the most significant reforms in over a decade, it's looking now like the government's not going to give us that information until October, November. The budget, which sets things like national living wage, employment tax, etc., is now not going to be till the end of November. And obviously, there's just sort of a couple of examples. So as we sit here now, it's too early in the process. We'll just have to let further information come in, and then we'll formulate a budget like we always do, looking at the what's the impact on income, what's the impact on expenditure, and the gap we've got to deal with. But it's just too early in the process at the moment.
So you're not sharing the leader's optimism at the moment. Okay, Mr. King.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm just going to ask some questions now, and whether the officers or the leader wants to answer. So it sort of comes right to the heart of it, and it's about credibility. So, and I've raised these questions before about the savings credibility. So what I'd like to try and understand is in Appendix D, there's a list of savings that are apparently under development. Which one of those, Mr. Harrison, do you believe will actually be deliverable in 25-26? When will we have a list of concrete proposals, not aspirations, of the savings that are under development? And I kind of touched on this earlier, Chair, when I mentioned about last week's adult social care scrutiny meeting, when the officers walked us through one of the proposals that the plan changes they're working on at the moment. And that's taken nearly 2 years to come to fruition. So I'm just trying to understand where we are now and what's actually going to be deliverable for the 25-26 budget. I wonder if you can help me out with that at all. Thank you.
If I can pick that up, the reason we put these as savings and development is to give committees like this, I suppose, insight into what's being worked on, even though they're not ready yet to be a full savings proposal. So in fairness to the leader at the moment, is not in a position to really say what's deliverable for 25-26, because officers haven't recommended yet what is the sort of the saving programme, what's the sort of the investment required versus the savings. It's purely to give, like I say, committees like this visibility of what officers are working on at the moment. So some of these will come forward for 25-26, but some of them by the nature will be a little bit longer term. But that's just in common with how we've done that, this sort of savings under development appendix in the past as well.
Mr. Innes. Mr. Innes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to cover off some of the specifics in the report, the high needs block which is obviously of significant overspend. What was the anticipated growth in the calendar year for the requirement? Because I see that it went up from 6538 up to 8176, which is a huge increase. And just to follow up on that, is the 8176 the final position, or are we still expecting even greater growth?
In terms of the second point about around greater growth, in the projection for the rest of the year, we have assumed some continued growth. So we're at just under 8,200 now. We've assumed that based on the current trajectory, that will continue to around 8,500 by March 2026, which is a 22% increase compared to the budgeted position. But that's based on the demand that we've seen in the first kind of period of the year, and assuming that it continues in some way by the end of the year. In terms of your specific question then about the growth that was included in the budget, if you give me a few minutes, I'll find it. But we had assumed a certain level of growth, but it has exceeded the point that we're at the moment. But what we tend to do when we're setting the budget is we will look at the demand that we've seen. We'll do some different scenarios around the increase in demand that we've seen over different periods and do sort of blended assumptions. So there was an element of growth included based on previous trends, but it has exceeded that level of growth that we'd anticipated. Because it is demand led and it is quite volatile, so it could be that demand kind of eases off or continues on its current trajectory.
Thank you. If I understand correctly, then we're going to be 22% above the additional percentage that was originally calculated. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's right. So and it is only a forecast at the moment, but the forecast that we've included in the report assumes a 22% increase compared to the budgeted position, which was based on a forecast of increased demand.
Yes.
That's huge. Absolutely unprecedented then in years gone by. Or am I misreading the figures? Because I look at the percentage increase over the last, well, even the last 4 years, and it's nowhere near that. So do we actually fully understand what the issue is there?
You're right. The sort of if you look back at the sort of the historic trend over the last few years, this has definitely taken an uptick, and we've seen a similar thing with sort of similar authorities as well. Now the belief is it's obviously not one of those that you can definitely nail 100%. It's with the government talking about sort of reforms to SEND. People are concerned that if they don't get their packages of support, as it were, before the reforms come in, that they'll miss out. So what we believe is happening, that both from sort of schools and parents, is a push to try and get through the door before those changes happen. Now, like I say, I mean, that's semi-anecdotal, but the fact that it seems to be replicated everywhere and there's quite a clear kind of uptick in the trend line kind of nationally, that does feel like it's got some credence. But no, you are right, it has had an acceleration in the number of pupils looking for support.
Simone, you've still got your microphone on. I think, Mr. Innes, I can probably give you some information as well. Obviously, I was the lead member for this area for the past 5 years, and I think this is one area where the lead member needs to have a really, really, really close view on what's happening and give confidence to families. So that has been a slight change from the election. So that might be that there's a lack of confidence in the department in this area. So, you know, I take what Declan's saying about the reforms coming forward. But I think there's a lot of confidence and trust that needs to be in the local authority with families and parents in that their children will get the needs without an EHCP. So that could be part of it as well. Okay, Mr. Mullaney, you're next.
Thank you. So obviously we've got this deficit, and I suppose the question is, can we deal with it either by reducing expenditure or increasing income? I mean, on the reducing expenditure, obviously page 4.11 says there's already been 290 million of savings delivered since 2010. So it's not as if there's a huge amount of fat in the budget that can be trimmed, really. And we're really at the sort of bone at the moment. And is there any realistic way in which any set of savings are going to find anything substantial, given the huge cutbacks that have already taken place over the last 15 years? And then on point 12 on page 4, the other thing is, of course, whether we get more money in. Of course, there has been the long-standing campaign for fair funding, but for that to really make the difference, given the scale of budget, then it's going to have to be a substantial increase in funding. But as the paperwork says, the indications are that we'll benefit marginally from the proposed changes, which suggests that's not going to be the miracle that saves the situation either. So really, it does seem to be quite a difficult situation. You mentioned, Mr. Harrison, that you'd approached MPs for support and indicated that your view was there was a lack of support. Was that they weren't keen to engage with you, or was it that they were keen to engage and support the campaign, but it was just that the government wasn't prepared to listen? What would your sort of feeling of that situation be?
The letter is quite recent, so we're waiting. We've got to give a bit of time, I suppose, probably a month for these people to be able to get through all the work they're doing. I don't know. Some have had quick responses in the past, but we haven't. The letter went out probably a fortnight ago, something like that. So we've got to wait and see where we go with it. But I'm not optimistic that they'll come riding in to help us because of the financial situation in government alone. But could I make a comment, Madam Chair, about your comment about the lead member? I think it's quite disgraceful, your form of attacks. He doesn't have to assure anybody. The director assures and the staff assures the public. The lead member does not make statements reassuring people. I just found that quite intimidating and inaccurate attitude to have against somebody, because you've been there, you know what it's like. You go in, you do your job, you ask questions. Mainly it should be supporting in political guidance. You may have had some initiatives, who knows, I wasn't there to see that. But to speak the way you have, and just now in this meeting in a cynical way, is absolutely disgraceful, because that portfolio holder, according to his director, has spoken to me on 3 occasions when I've approached her, and she came to talk to me quite recently and say, no, he is doing a superb job, getting on with the staff well, doing a job that's good, and he's no different to anybody else in this room who has a full-time job who is still a member here. So I just think that your attacks are really fairly outrageous without real confirmation. I just think, you know, it's intimidation through arrogance, which isn't really appropriate in this. You should be talking and inquiring, but not suggesting that he should be there holding children and doing all sorts. And praise, yeah, there was some comment last week somewhere, maybe should have his arms around people. He does a good job. The officers are there. Now, you know, and I know, that if he didn't turn up for 2 months, would it crash? Would any of us with a portfolio didn't turn up for 2 months to a cabinet? What would happen? The business would carry on, because we have excellent full-time directors running departments, and they're not hanging on the edge waiting for the portfolio member. So I think it's outrageous, your attacks. They're unfounded. It's unprofessional.
I'm just waiting for you to finish, because we're here to scrutinise you, not the other way around. So we're entitled to our opinion.
Madam Chairman, you made a comment.
I'm the chair of this meeting, and you're entitled to your opinion. This is not the place to give
Point
your
of order, Chair.
I'm the chair.
Point of order. What Mr. Harrison is saying is completely irrelevant to the scrutiny proceedings of this meeting.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. I do understand you feel strongly about your cabinet members, but this is not the time nor place. We're trying to scrutinise the MTFS and your plans for the council's finances, Thank you.
And all the things you just said are not something that I've said anyway. So you're totally out of order yourself for having a little rant in scrutiny. So yeah, you carry on. Dr. Bloxham, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, Simone, coming back to Mr. Hinn's point from earlier, and the chair's interjection that the overspend might be due to confidence in the cabinet lead. So a couple of points. You did say it was a demand-led service, so I'm not sure how any sort of confidence or lack of confidence would increase demand for send. So it seems a little bit absurd, but if you could just clarify that. And also, when the budget was made back in February, when did the overspend actually begin? Did it begin on the 2nd of May, or did it start diverging before that?
So in terms of the last point, I think we've seen continued growth in EHCPs. I think we forecast a growth rate of about 7% for 25-26, but actually it's kind of in the last quarter really of 24-25 we did start to see some further increases. But in previous years it's been higher and lower, and that's what we have seen. Because it's demand led, it is sometimes quite difficult to plan accurately for the impact of the increased demand. There is, just to remind members, there is a scrutiny workshop in October as well. I think it's the 15th of October, where we will present some further details around the position, what's causing the demand, and also probably to put that into context with the national position as well, just to see that it is actually a national trend. It isn't just impacting on Leicestershire, but that also will give members a chance to have more of a deep dive. And as Declan's also mentioned, we do think that the national reforms, or the impending national reforms, are having an impact as well, because parents and probably schools are looking to make sure their children and pupils are getting the support they need before those reforms come in.
Thank you. So if lack of confidence in the cabinet member was a factor, then it's just good to know that it started under the previous cabinet lead.
Mr. Balls.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And just on that, obviously we had children and family scrutiny as well last week. And do you think it's coincidental that we're actually clearing the backlog, being successful in actually processing these assessments and finding more children who need our support, and the cost goes up? So I just wondered how the collaboration between departments really works, because on one hand we've got this great success in getting assessments through quicker, cutting down that backlog, and then suddenly finding the budget for identifying children who need extra support goes up. I suggest that maybe there's a lack of communication maybe between the two, and I'd love to know how that relationship works, because we're having great success assessing more children and finding the support they need, but obviously the cost goes up because we're identifying more children potentially in that process.
Simone touched on, there's a workshop with sort of scrutiny in October. The director will be there. So if we're going to get sort of deeply into the high needs block, that makes sense to use that workshop to do that. And just in terms of your point about the departments being joined up, they're very joined up. You know, obviously kind of if you identify more kids with sort of needing support, the costs do go up. It's always difficult with SEND, obviously sort of operates a little bit on sort of school years as well, although you will get sort of requests coming through the year. Often the changes don't happen until those change in academic years, so it can take sort of jumps and steps. But we do work well with sort of, you know, finance and the department. We have sort of finance teams embedded in the department to help them with that sort of forecasting and make sure we can join up the operation and the financial side. But I would suggest that we're going to get deeply into the high needs. It'd be better when the directors there, because they can sort of give much better insight than we can, and what drives the support, what different options are looking at in support and things like that.
Mr. King.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to go back to the very specific questions that I had, which didn't manage to go through all of them. Just talking about the SEND overspend, I understand there is a national trend. I was at a meeting last week, or in another hat, and I understand nationally the increase in the SEND personal health social care statements is around 10%, although one of the issues I understand is that the government itself, the new Labour government since July last year, was talking about making significant changes to the SND framework. And what's happened is, I understand one of the drivers anyway, is that schools have been encouraging parents to make applications, and so basically there's been a bit of a wave increase across the country because schools get more funding if children are given that. But just talking about the S&D overspend, obviously that's off balance sheet. In fact, it's on the balance sheet, but it's off. We don't actually have to fund it. But one of the things I do recall, Simone, from previously is you said we'd got a reserve fund to kind of mitigate against the kind of if the government suddenly decided to call it in. It's a very significant amount of money. So are we having to add additional contingency to meet the overspend? And I just wonder if you can just outline what is the additional contingency that we're having to allocate towards this, and where is that money coming from? If you could just explain that without impacting on frontline services, as the leaders just indicated, and also yeah, so if you could just go through that, that'd be great. Thank you. And I've got a couple more questions after that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, the council has a strategy of making some provision towards the deficit each year, just so there is that some cover for when the override ends, because A, we don't know for sure when it'll end, and B, what the government's long-term plans is. So we do set aside a proportion of the deficit into a reserve each year. It has been 50% for the last few years. So as part of the period for monitoring, and it's one of the factors that is driving the overspend in the main revenue budget, we are having to increase the amount that we're putting into that reserve because of the overspend. So within the table at the beginning of the report that's feeding into that overall overspend position, there is an increased contribution of just under 50 million into the reserve for this year to keep it in line with that previous strategy.
I just mention one point, and that is the difficulty you have is, although it's off balance sheet in theory, it is real money, it's real cash that you're sort of putting out the door. So we do need to sort of try and make sure we can fund that cash, not leave ourselves in a position where you actually get into debt to fund this deficit. So at the moment we do lose interest income because of the deficit, but it's not as bad in theory as it could be if the whole thing came back on balance sheet.
If I can just come back on that, so 15 million additional into reserves for 24-25. Sorry, 25-26. Okay, so what's the total amount that we're holding in reserves to cover off the high needs block at the moment?
So as at the end of the last financial year, based on the previous cumulative deficit, which was just over 60 million, we would have had in the region of 30 million in reserves. We are at the moment forecasting that cumulative deficit will exceed 100 million. So we'll be, as I said, increasing that reserve contribution proportionately. So we should have in the region of 50 million towards that 100 million pounds cumulative deficit. But we will keep that under review and adjust that as the year progresses as we need to.
That's great. Thank you for that. And further question I got is just about capital affordability. Now, obviously, given the higher inflation because of the doom loop economics of the government, we've got higher inflation and higher borrowing costs. So I'm just wondering what schemes in the capital programme are now realistically affordable and which might already be at risk of being binned off because we can't afford to do them. I'm just wondering if anyone's able to just explain or identify any of those projects now that might be at risk. Thank you.
We have got a gap in the capital programme over the MTFS. So we've got a gap of just over 80 million as things stand between the priority projects and funding. Some schemes are funded externally, or we have external grants towards them anyway. Some schemes are funded by the council. I think at this point it's probably too early to give any further details on any projects that might not be able to complete. I think at this point we would review the priorities in the programme, review funding options, look at potential borrowing costs in the future, and then that would be a decision for Cabinet to consider as part of the MTFS refresh.
Sorry, Chair. So just coming back to that. So at the moment you can't say which projects. Okay. Right. So just then finally, Chair, you know, from what I've heard, I'm really concerned actually that, you know, despite what the leader says and his rhetoric, we're actually, you know, I mean, you talk about you're going to appoint some consultants maybe in November, who will then have less than 3 months to bring forward a detailed programme of savings and efficiencies, additional to the ones that are already underway in work, etc., for us to agree. But you've also identified that and stated repeatedly that you're looking to implement tax cuts. I just, it's just not credible, Chairman. It's just not credible at all. I'm really concerned here, and I should think all our residents are concerned that there's just no credibility here at all. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, Mr. Harrison, unfortunately, the first few months of your administration have been littered with instability and all sorts of, well, no, it's a fact. It's a fact. Well, it is, because it all comes back to financial leadership.
I think we're coming back to the confidence point.
It's confidence and leadership of this authority. And at the moment, I don't think I've got any, quite frankly, what I've heard today. And I'm not sure any of our residents will have much either, unfortunately. Thank you, Chair.
I think we'll let the residents be the judge of that. They've had 24 years of tax leaps forward. Maximum taxes now is the standard thing, not the 3%. Yeah, but understood and regretted it, could see, but I did attempt to try to get cuts, but nobody wanted to work with that. But it is serious, and this is your mess that we're now inherited, and we're determined as Reform to do something about that. It's as simple as that, Madam Chairman. You sat there and you led and did nothing about it. There's a problem. You don't just sit there watching it get bigger and bigger and bigger. You have. Now, we've come in, and I particularly know what to do and get on with the job. We have to do something. We cannot sit back indefinitely and say, well, it'll be all right. Well, it won't be all right, because the debt is becoming overwhelming. Something has to be done. Now, if you'd have been doing it over the last few years, we wouldn't be where we are, but we are here today. So all I'm saying is, bear with me. You had 24 years. Give us a few more months to be able to get something forward, to be able to come and talk to you and say, this is what we are doing and this is what we're going to achieve. Now, that's fine. So I would just say, you've sat back for all those years, just a few more months, and then hopefully, God willing, we'll come forward with a plan that is appropriate and works. Thank you.
Just to clarify, Mr. Harrison, last year's financial budget, when I was acting leader, was forecasting using £6 million of reserve, but I pulled the budget back in and we didn't need to dip into reserves last year. So just to clarify that point, but thank you for that. Mr. King.
I've just listened to Mr. Harrison again, his rhetoric about efficiency and savings. But what I've not discovered today is when the Cabinet is going to bring forward a credible, detailed plan about those efficiencies and savings. And as my colleague, Mr. Mullaney, pointed out earlier, the Council has already made efficiencies of £290 million. You just said we did nothing. Actually, we've done an awful lot. Despite what we may have not wanted to do. And you're right, council tax did increase. Unfortunately, that's nothing any of us particularly wanted to do. Unfortunately, that's just the financial economics of the situation. And you and your party are adamant that you can save a substantial amount of money on top of 290 million in efficiencies on a yet uncosted, unworked up programme in 3 months' time, and at the same time deliver tax cuts. It's just not credible at all. Just not credible. And on top of that, you've had a massive political and organisational instability. You sacked your own deputy leader only a couple of weeks ago. You reshuffle. I mean, okay, these things happen. You know, no one's perfect. I get that, but that creates instability. And I see Mr. Crooks over there. It'll take him time to get up to speed with things, and the other Mr. Abbott time to get up to speed with things. I get that, but yet again, you know, it slows down things. It slows down the efficiency and effectiveness of political decision making, and that's what you're now, you know, for rightly or wrongly, but the people of Leicestershire have put you in for. But at the moment, what you're talking about, it doesn't add up at all. It's unfunded tax cuts. It's bonkers economics, basically. Quite frankly, maybe you know, you've been taking lessons from the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Maybe, I don't know. But thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
How cynical can you be? I will not share with you, but I do know what has been suggested in the early savings, which is dramatic and important. And when it's appropriate with a worked up plan, I will be prepared to share. That's based on my confidence of how we can move forward, knowing that a professional international organisation has had a look and said, hey, our early doors thought is that. And it's enough to make me have confidence to know going forward it will deliver the sort of levels that we need. And they're all substantial numbers. Thank you.
Again, I think our residents and all of us as taxpayers will look forward to that. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I disagree with Mr. King when he says that the leadership is not credible. I think it's absolutely incredible because he's sat here this morning, he's dithered, he's diverged from the actual questions that we've actually asked him. He's blathered on and not answered a single question, saying when the time's appropriate, and he won't share, and he knows this and he knows that. But I'm an avid note taker, so I've summarised what I've actually heard this morning, and it is that he's confirmed he doesn't have the confidence in his cabinet to deliver a balanced budget, and that the members of the people of Leicestershire back in May elected to make these decisions. You did say that, and it's actually on
Madam Chairman, I have not said I have no confidence in my cabinet this morning.
Madam Chair, he was asked twice by myself. He refused to answer, and I did state that you clearly don't have the confidence in your cabinet to make those decisions because you're going to be bringing in external professionals at taxpayers' expense to do this for you instead of using your cabinet like your previous administration did and the previous administrations before that. You've also stated that you'll be cutting council tax without cutting service. You'll be making efficiency savings greater than the deficit caused by these said council tax cuts to leave Leicestershire in a better financial position. But you don't want to say how you're going to do this. So I'm not going to ask the leader to reply because it's just going to be another 20 minutes of waffle. So I'd like to ask our professionals and, you know, by your own admission, excellent full-time directors. So Declan, based on what the leader said this morning, with 8 to 12 weeks to go before a draft budget must be published, are we in a position to lower taxes? Yes or no?
My reply is the same as the reply before. At the start of the process, we've got more uncertainty than we normally do with this process, with the changes going on with funding reform, with what's going on with central government. So we've just got to let the process continue. We've just got to let more information come in, and then we'll, as officers, we'll propose a budget for consultation in December. That's all I can say at this point.
So I think we get from that Mr. Harrison's confidence is probably a bit premature, that we can't really say that in the minute. And I think we're in this situation where we are, and we've just got to manage it as best we can, as has done before. Declan, can I just go back to the income that we're getting from obviously investments and things that we've done before that are helping to prop up the council and the budget. So have we got any figure about what we're getting from all those investments that previous administrations have put in place, how much that's giving to the revenue budget to prop it up?
It's a little bit over 8 million per annum.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask the lead as well? I think the lead member for finance in one of the cabinet meetings said that Doge would be coming to Leicestershire. Are you able to give any update? Obviously, you said you're going out at taxpayers' expense to get international consultants. Where I think Reform UK have said that Doge will be free for all local authorities. So can you just explain why you're spending taxpayers' money rather than Doge coming here free?
Well, it's quite simple, really. In simple terms, I let them know that welcome people to come and talk to us, because I'd need to talk to them in detail. The sort of money we've got to save, I don't think they would be in that position to do so, because it's a considerable amount of money that's got to be saved. So that's where we are with that. It's not ducking, it's not diving. They haven't said if they wanted to come, I'd welcome them to sit and talk, and I could be open and frank and say, this is what we've inherited. This is what we've got to achieve to be able to put this business right. Can you help? And from, I think what they've been doing is probably not on the scale that we've got to work on. It's considerable and it's vast.
So you've got no confidence that Doge would be able to rectify the issues that you...
No, that is you putting words in my mouth. I said I'd welcome them to come, but I don't think they would have the time and all of the skills people there working to raise the sort of money savings that we've got to create. So Councillor Smith can give you instructions as he normally does, but at the end of the day, yeah, and he's mouthing it over to you. So, I mean, I don't know how you work it between the two of you, but it's clear that I've said they have never approached to come in. If they had done, I let the word out that they'd be welcome to come, but they haven't. But they probably realise that we've got to raise a lot of money. You know, so 10 or 20,000 million isn't going to do much good for us, or even 30 million. So we've got to raise a lot of money, and it's important.
So you haven't proactively asked them to come here?
I said I'd welcome them to come.
That's different from proactively inviting them to come and have a look. So have you actually contacted Doge to come here and have a look?
It's simple. The invite went out to them.
Okay, so you have invited them here.
Yes.
Right,
yes.
Clear answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible for me to see the letter that you sent to the MPs?
Yes. Yes, of course.
If you can share that with Scrutiny Commission, that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, can you share with, I presume the tender that's gone out for the consultants is also a public document, is it?
Not yet.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you asked for that on Friday. I was just confirming I had the latest version, but yeah, I can send that to you.
Okay, so can you send that round to all of Scrutiny Commission?
Yeah, all they're interested.
Yeah, so we've all got seen a letter of that consultant's letter. Thank you. I think that's all the questions that I had. Sorry, I have a few more hands. I don't know who was first. Mr. Poland?
Thank you. Again, as factual questions, I suppose, as possible, maybe Simone. I appreciate we're talking about lowering council tax, and I appreciate you wouldn't want to put a specific figure on how much we're going to lower it. So for the sake of my question, if we assumed it was a freeze rather than a cut, although I appreciate it's going to be a cut, if it was a freeze, how much money would Leicestershire lose out on compared to, say, the amount that was put up in the last budget? So what's that figure between what you know, a zero and whatever maximum would be?
So in the MTFS currently, we have assumed a 2.99% council tax increase each year for the next 3 years. Each 1% increase is about 4 million. So for 26-27, which is the next budget that we're looking to set, that a 2.99% increase that we've built in would be worth around £12 million. And obviously it would compound up for later years of the MTFS as well.
Thank you. So just so I'm clear then, so we're talking about tax cut, but for the sake of this question, if we assume a freeze, that 12 million will be found through efficiency savings, not cuts. So we're not going to see service cuts in the budget. We're going to see these are going to be services that will continue just in a more efficient way that will add up to £12 million or more. Is that correct?
Don't have a draft budget at the moment. As previous questions, when we get to December, we'll have a draft budget, and then we can set it. The council tax, in truth, is the last thing that you tend to set. And in previous years, we have given ranges of council tax, things like that, just because it doesn't actually get finalised until February. So at the moment, we don't have a draft budget to make that sort of confirmation or either agree to it or disagree to it.
Mr. Harrison, can you turn your microphone off, please?
Sorry.
Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's very interesting. So, quick calculation there. The current budget gap for MTFS is showing for next year is 39 million. If we didn't increase council tax, as Mr. Poland's just said, and there was a freeze, we're looking at adding an additional 12 million at least, if not more, to that 38 million. That makes 50 million gap, which would have to be found. That's just a freeze, not a cut. I'm sure if it was frozen, it'd be even more substantial. And then if we applied that freeze over the MTFS period, that is tens of millions of pounds, even more, to be found in service efficiencies. But just coming back to a point that Declan just made, he said the draft budget will come to Cabinet in December. That's what I've understood. Well, if that's the case, and we're not appointing these international consultants until some point in November, that gives us, what, 2-3 weeks to come up with a plan? That's just, as I said earlier, that is just not credible, Chairman, at all. For this council, for an organisation the size of Leicestershire County Council, £1.3 billion gross expenditure organisation, that is just not credible to be making major changes, strategic review in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, being generous. I just cannot see how that's even remotely credible. And I do think the leader, needs to bring forward a proper programme timetable of his strategic review that he's talking about as soon as possible, instead of the rhetoric that we've had this morning and lack of direct answers to some of most of our questions. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, do you want to come back yet?
Yeah, because it's true, but it isn't true. I cannot say, because we're still got a tender out. I know some numbers. I know that it's going to be very important. So what do you expect? I can only say that that's the truth. We don't know at this stage. All I'm saying is that I believe that if this goes through, it will be very successful and will be very helpful for us.
I think the point, Mr. King, obviously from previous experience of setting a budget, you can't bring those savings in at the very last minute. The budget setting starts as soon as we start the financial year. And I think Mr. King's highlighting that I don't think you'll find those within the 25-26, sorry, next year's budget, the 26-27 budget, because it just won't be possible within 3 weeks to do that. So I think he's saying that you're not quite being as honest as you possibly could to say that you'll find those savings unless you already have found them and you're not sharing them. So I think that's the point Mr. King was getting at. Declan, just one question about the budget. The government saying they're not going to do the budget till the 26th of November. What impact is that going to have for us, budget setting, and obviously then the districts, etc.?
So it's obviously not, the later the government's budget is, obviously the less helpful it is for us. So you've got the direct consequence of the budget itself. So I mentioned before, things like national living wage is obviously sort of a key figure that goes into our budget because it drives so much of the social care costs. We're not going to know that till the end of November, which makes things difficult. And also kind of each of the departments within government, whether that's Department for Education, Department of Transport, also won't get their next year budgets. So that in turn creates a knock-on effect to us, despite MHCLG committing to having a local government settlement at the end of November. We're expecting that now in the same time we've had it in previous years, so getting in much more close towards Christmas. And so our main settlement we're not expecting to probably see until, in truth, probably after the Cabinet meeting in December. And grants that we get from areas like Department of Transport, Department for Education, they're going to drift back as well. So some December, some January. So it really will be sort of a definition of a draft budget come December, because there's going to be an awful lot of information we just don't know at that point.
So I suppose we go back to the point
that everyone's been making to be able to freeze council tax or cut council tax, you're not going to be able to make that decision because everything else is going to be pushed back now. So that's going to be incredibly difficult to find savings to be able to freeze or cut council tax at that very last minute. Is that your view as well?
So, like I said, the December budget is going to be drafted. It's a budget that we'll go out with for consultation, with obviously a decision then coming in February. So it may be, and we have to do this in the past, we go out sort of as we consult with sort of a range of options, and it may be that we have to sort of introduce things into the extra information to the scrutiny process through January. I mean, it's also kind of not inconceivable as well, and you see quite a lot of authorities doing this, where they use the budget almost to sort of just really articulate the challenge, and then you set out what the process is to close that challenge. So I imagine kind of the less information we've got December, the more we'll be doing of setting out this is actually the process of what it's going to be working. This is how we're going to sort of target the sort of the areas of uncertainty that we need to close.
I suppose for that budget setting, if savings have got to be found from feedback from the consultants early on to go to directors of individual departments, they're not going to be able to find that within a few weeks, are they? They're going to struggle to come up with, you've got to save 20 million from your budget. They're not going to be able to come up with a plan to do that, are they, very quickly?
You'd expect a mixed approach, and I stress the word expect because, as the leader said, we haven't got the tenders back yet. But you would expect them to have an initial review of the initiatives that are being worked on at the moment. Is there any of those that can be accelerated? Is there any of those that can be kind of made more ambitious so we get more savings out of it? So you would expect ones like that have got the potential to get a good level of certainty earlier. If it's things that are brand new that we've never done before, to your point, they will take a little bit longer. But the thing that we have. We will expect the consultant is not to wait for everything to come at the end as a big kind of reveal, but to sort of drip in the sort of proposals in, partly so they can test it, but partly to help us with our financial planning as well.
And of the consultants, so is this going to be an investor save? So if they can't identify the savings that offset the cost, because obviously we've got to take that cost out as well. So they might produce savings, but they're costing us £35 million to do that. You've got to find those savings just to pay them before you even gain anything from your budget.
No, absolutely. And you'll see from the tender documents, this is going to come into two phases. So you've got an initial review phase, which is just sort of straight cost by its nature. You're just asking people to identify and create sort of initial business cases to make a decision on. So that first phase will be pure cost. But when you get into the implementation side of things, you will see from the tender documents, we are looking for them to put their fees at risk. So it is very much that incentivised basis. So when they come back with proposals, it's all right saying on a bit of paper that you can save X million, but actually for them to get their fees, they're going to have to sort of show that they are actually showing that they have delivered that savings. So, and absolutely, as you said, and it plays a little bit to the what I said about sort of they'll drop their initiatives in. You're not again waiting for them to all deliver all the savings in one go at the end. You would expect that gradual drop in of sort of savings to identified, savings to be delivered. So absolutely, we'll be looking to do on a sort of spend to save basis.
Obviously, the leaders could have saying that he's identified some companies internationally that do this work. What happens if we don't get any tenders back that are reasonable priced or one that we like? What options going forward are we doing? And we just carry on as we have been then, or is there something else that we would look at that late stage?
So obviously sort of chief officers and sort of transformation teams, etc., are still looking at sort of savings internally. So it's not just that if this sort of tender isn't as successful as we hope, there's nothing to go with. There is sort of I suppose people are working on things. It is the nature of tenders. You don't always get back what you hope. We have done a reasonable amount of research, sort of making sort of informal soundings, looking at what other councils are doing. So hopefully we've positioned it that it does come back successfully. We've got a bit of early interest at the moment, so we're the moment sort of things are going to plan as it were. But if I don't know, if something changes, we're just going to have to sort of deal with that situation at the time. It's hard to say this far in advance, to be honest.
And has this happened in any other local authority in England? This sort of consultants?
It varies. I mean, we haven't had sort of, I suppose, you hear the phrase sort of strategic partner for sort of quite a few years. The way we've dealt with it in the past tends to have been kind of looking at more sort of specific initiatives. The leader mentioned before the adult social care target operating model, that obviously was kind of quite focused on just a subset of kind of what adult social care deal with. So the difference on this review is trying to expand it to everything across the authority. So absolutely other authorities have done that in the past, and that's obviously sort of some of the intelligence that we've been trying to gather about, you know, where has this been done, or this sort of thing being done before. The kind of obviously sort of a big authority was kind of obviously sort of a low funded authority, so we do think it is a challenge. You know, we're not sort of which is consistent with what we said as officers in the past when we sort of formed previous MTFSs, but we've seen enough to feel strongly that this is going to be a worthwhile exercise.
And do you have any ballpark figures that a review of this that's been done at any local authority, what sort of savings have they managed to find? Do you have any estimates or information about that?
It's always difficult because you've got sort of certain sort of phases of this annual, is kind of what the consultants find, but also what the sort of officers and members are sort of willing to implement as an organisation. So when you get to kind of what they've actually done, there's so many kind of different factors that can influence it. It's difficult, but we're kind of obviously kind of as part of the tender, we are sort of giving them the expectation of what the level of financial gap we've got in the MTFS, and we're looking for sort of people to give responses in that sort of order of magnitude.
So once it comes back, then it will be down to the leader and his cabinet to make those political decisions about what they're willing to alter to get the savings that they want. Is that what you're basically saying?
Well, that's always the ultimate. I mean, with political organisations, that's always the ultimate decision-making point. Obviously, before it gets to that point, the leader and the cabinet will get assurances from chief officers that, you know, what's their view on the saving, what the risk, particularly, and again, you'll see it in the tender that we have asked the consultants to be very mindful of kind of the service impacts as well. So we should get that rounded view of what's happening. So it's not just kind of we're investing X pound to get X pound back out. It should be a rounded view on what's going to happen with the service. But it's ultimately going to be a political choice, but it will go through that sort of officer kind of work as well to make sure the Leicestershire context is taken into account.
So is it something you'll have to sign off then as something that you're happy for the local authority to do? Is that going to happen as well?
Yeah, it will do. I mean, kind of, again, as part of the MTFS process, I have to sign off the assumptions within the MTFS that it's kind of a robust basis. Obviously, kind of it's going to be a lot of my teams are going to be involved in sort of working with this consultant as well. And one thing we're really mindful of as well as officers, that we need to fully engage with this, because you don't just want somebody to come in, make a change, go away, and then things start to fall back. You want to make sure any changes are worthwhile and stay there for the long term. So now we, you know, both myself and the rest of the CMT sort of understand what's going on. We need to get sort of fully engaged with this as well.
Thank you. Is there any other questions on this item from any other members? No? Okay, so thank you very much. I think that's been a really robust discussion. So recommendations, we're asked to note the report, and our comments will be presented to the Cabinet at the end of the week. Okay, I don't know if you're staying for any other reports, Mr. Harrison, are you staying or? Okay, so we'll move on to item 9, the Corporate Asset Management Plan 2022-26, the Annual Performance Strategy Update. For 24-25, pages 13 to 54. So Lucy Littlefair, Assistant Director of Corporate Resources, will present this item, supported by Karen Friesen, Head of Strategic Property Service. So Lucy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning all. Today I'm going to be presenting the Annual Performance and Strategy Update for the Corporate Asset Management Plan 2022 to 26, covering the financial year of 24 to 25. The report outlines how our property portfolio supported service delivery, contributed to the current strategic outcomes, and evolved in response to changing needs and economic conditions. It also sets out how the council manages its property assets. It aligns with the council's strategic plan and the medium-term financial strategy, and ultimately is there to ensure that our estates are fit for purpose, efficient, environmentally sustainable, and financially resilient. And it's built on 4 key ambitions. In terms of the overview of the portfolio, the report sets out that as of April 2025, the council held 716 property assets valued at 519 million, which was an increase of 12 million from the previous year. And those assets include schools, offices, libraries, depots, farms, and land for infrastructure. The Investing in Leicestershire programme, ILP, now accounts for 43% of the total portfolio value, driven by the increased value of the rural estate. In terms of the capital programme, the MTFS allocated 439 million to the capital programme over the 4-year period, with 183 million involving property input. And the projects include new schools, infrastructure and ILP developments. 2024-2025, 12 of 24 scheduled projects were completed on time, including new primary schools in Colville and Market Harborough and Hugglescott Primary School extension, with 71% of ongoing projects currently on or ahead of schedule. The report details maintenance and compliance, with the central maintenance fund for that period of time being £3.3 million, and that supports planned and reactive maintenance. It also confirms that our estimated future liabilities for repairs and compliance currently stands at 51.1 million, with 1.8 million, which is 3.5%, in our urgent priority category. Environmental performance, energy costs fell by 21%, saving us 600,000. CO2 emissions dropped by 7% and our water usage decreased by 11%. However, total energy consumption rose slightly due to higher occupancy rates. The report details performance across our key performance indicators, and there were 24 KPIs assessed. 67% were achieved, 11% showed improvement and 22% weren't met. Notable achievements including improved property conditions ratings, reduced maintenance backlog and strong project delivery performance, with 90% on time and 90.9% within budget. The report also sets out the 2 asset challenges reviews that we did for Harborough District and Hinckley and Bosworth Borough, where 283 of our assets were assessed. 19 assets were identified for disposal with potential capital receipts of 8.75 million, with estimated savings of 242,000 in operating costs and 1.39 million avoided in maintenance costs. In terms of revenue and receipts, our capital receipts were 145,000 over this period, with 2.3 million carried forward due to delayed completions. The report also just calls out some of our challenges, particularly around resourcing, particularly recruitment challenges in our strategic property services, with it's sometimes up to a third of the posts vacant due just to the market buoyancy and challenges in recruiting to chartered surveyor posts. It also sets out in terms of the camp action plan for 25 to 2020, between 2025 and 2029, and what some of the key actions are for the coming year, namely meeting our capital receipts targets, maximising revenue and cost savings, completing that maintenance programme and implementing the rural strategy. So in conclusion, the camp continues to be a vital framework for managing our property assets. It delivers value for money, supports strategic goals and adapts to evolving service needs. The Scrutiny's Commission feedback will inform future updates and help ensure the Council's property assets remain fit for purpose. And Karen Frierson, the new Head of Strategic Property, and I welcome any questions or comments from the Commission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lucy. And Karen, I think this is your first Scrutiny Commission, so welcome.
Thank you. Morning, everybody.
Is there anything you want to add at this point?
Not particularly, only to say I joined LCC at the very end of June. So I've just been taking my time.
Oh, your microphone's gone off, sorry.
Yeah, colleagues in the team, wider stakeholders, and just sort of look at the whole resource picture to enable us to deliver both the camp and the ILP portfolios as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison, anything you want to add?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman, not at this moment.
Okay. Is this sort of an area that you're thinking about maybe getting some savings from, or is that something you've considered?
It's so boring. No comment at the moment. It's been reviewed. I've explained. People are coming in, and I'm not going to prejudice anything.
You get that. It's a no. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions from members? Dr. Bloxham.
Thank you. Yeah, just a bit of clarity. Looking at the KPIs, which are mostly good, as you say. Just a bit between the rental income and the income return. The rental income slightly exceeded target, but the income return is sort of really under target. And I just wondered why that was, and what the relationship is between those two things.
I just want to find the page. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, and the investing in Leicestershire programme. Yeah.
So it's 6B is the income returns, the third one down, and rental income 6D, the sixth one down.
Page you looking at, Dr. Bloxham? Page 30. 39. Okay. Page 19 in the report.
I think Karen, yeah, as Declan's just kind of helped with, in terms of the first one, in terms of the income return, is actually about market returns, whereas our rental income is about the year-on-year returns. Does that make sense, Karen? Yeah.
So I still don't quite follow. Is it that the income return includes all the stuff like property funds and the other one is just buildings or something? I still don't quite follow.
The first one on is the comparison against the sort of the wider market. At the moment we've got quite a lot of rural estate. We've got a lot of development land held as well, so that's suppressing the rental returns. So when you compare it to just sort of an average kind of market level, so that's why it brings that down. Whereas the other figure is just looking internally at what happens year on year. So effectively both parts of the comparison have got that high level of rural and development in. So it's just that sort of year on year comparison. So one we've got an excess of development and the other it's sort of like with like. Does that make sense?
Okay, thanks. So sorry, you said it was the rural area that brings the return down then? So the fact that it's sort of 50% of the market return?
Absolutely, because on a rural estate, typically you'll maybe earn 1% on the revenue return, whereas if you've got sort of a commercial, I don't know, an industrial unit, something like that, you might be earning 5-6%. So when you've got that mix that's heavily weighted towards rural, it does drag it down significantly. On the rural side of things, just to clarify where we do hold them, the capital returns on rural are very, very good. So it's just a different mix.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Piper?
Thank you, Chair. You talk about quite a wide spread of properties on those. One of the things which water companies state is that of all the water that's actually supplied to a building, predominantly homes, they quote, 25% of it is flushed down the toilet. There are around that you see in some places, not many, what they call waterless urinals. Have you looked at the use of waterless urinals and whether or not they would be cost saving if you use them to replace broken rather than replace them for the sake of replacing them, and also the amount of money that would save in water rates?
It isn't. Don't believe it's something that we've considered. However, yeah, we do have within property. Obviously, our use of energy in terms of the costs, yeah, is something, yeah, that we, we keenly focus on. So it's definitely something I can mention to the team, yeah, to do a little bit of exploratory work on, if that would be okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? No? Oh, sorry, Mr. King.
Well, I'm not sure we'll get very far with this, but because Mr. Harrison doesn't seem to want to answer any questions. But I think what this does show is that previously decisions that have been made by this authority are continuing to, for the long term, are delivering a sustained return to the authority, which has helped, support the very challenging MTFS situation, but also, does demonstrate that we've been able to make investments in improving infrastructure. We delivered new schools, we've delivered road improvements, all those sorts of things, units for companies to rent, to prevent jobs from being exported to neighbouring areas. That's all really important for our residents and for us as the local authority to help support our council tax base and business rates. So I think overall this is showing a positive thing. The question I didn't get answered earlier was, is if cuts are being identified, is this an area that's been lined up for cuts by the administration to help fund cuts in council tax? That's what I want to try and understand. I wonder if anyone can. I wonder if you can explain that, Mr. Harrison, if that's your line of thinking. Thank you. Same thing.
Yeah. I think at this stage we really don't know. Yes, there's been some good achievements in property. I acknowledge that. Of course I do. But at the end of the day, how do we know what they're going to suggest at this stage? We've had sort of feedback from them that they believe there are savings of substantial amounts, but to break down detail, I just would not know, and I'm not sure how that would go about looking at these sort of things. I just don't know. That's the honest truth. But, I can't tell you anything else.
So just to help, partners here, a lot of people involved here, a lot of companies involved that rent land, rent buildings from us. Can you confirm, Mr. Harrison, there's going to be no fire sale of any of the assets held by the County Council? Thank you.
Wow, you certainly make it entertainment. How can I say that, in all honesty, today, that anything would happen? The efficiency of coming in, I don't know where they will go. All I know is that services are protected. So, I don't know, looking at this, it seems reasonable, but I'm not an expert in all of this. But it looks good, what you've been doing over the years, gathering more assets and developing it. But I just don't know. So you have to accept an honest answer, or you can sit there twiddling your pen and thinking, what else can I ask him now? Be realistic. I don't know. We wait to see, and then there will be questions and there will be answers. But I do not know from a team that are coming in. They're the experts. They will sit down and explain to us where they can do things, and it will go on from there. So the answer is, I don't know. You can ask an officer and he's not going to be able to say, oh, yeah, well, I can tell you this, tell you that. How can they? We don't know.
I think the point Mr. King's kind of get to is just that, to keep certainty in the market, and that, that would be if the consultants came back and said, yeah, you can sell your assets, that will fund your revenue budget for 3 years. Fantastic. But politically, that's not a good move to make. So I suppose Mr. King's just asking, are you ruling out having a fire sale of all the properties? Is that something that you wouldn't choose to do, I think is the question.
Totally.
Thank you. Mr. King, was there anything else you want? Has that clarified it?
Well, not really. I mean, Mr. Harrison's, added more ambiguity to matters, to be quite frank with you, Chair, because a few minutes ago he said that he did, you just said he doesn't know where the savings are, yet he said more than once this morning that the team that's going to come in, not that that team's actually been appointed or even the recruitment of that team started yet, because I don't believe the tender's actually been issued yet. So somebody is going to, he thinks is going to tender for some work to do, which they're not going to be able to start until the end of November. We've got a £439 million programme under the MTFS, of the capital programme, over the 4 years. And I already asked the question of whether there would be any capital items that will be taken out, but I haven't got an answer. I haven't got a straight answer to that. And now we're asking about the investing, the very successful as he's acknowledged, Investing in Leicestershire programme, which is delivering millions of pounds a year in revenue income into the council's budget, as well as delivering much needed infrastructure investment. And he has neither confirmed nor denied that there will, I think that's fair to say, that there will be any sale of those assets to help fund any of the so-called tax cuts that he's suggesting will still be deliverable against a very considerable MTFS headwind, if I can put it like that. And it's just incredible that he's just said that. So, you know, investors, people who've got their businesses, they do not know at this point whether those assets are still going to be owned by the county council after February or not, or whether they're going to be put up for sale, because, you know, he has refused to say one way or the other at the moment what the street, you know, and the officers, to the greatest respect, will only follow the political steer and direction that's given by you and your cabinet, and you've just said you can't say what that is, or you're not willing to at the moment.
All I would say, Madam Chairman, in all my years in politics, I've never come across somebody who is so provocative and arrogant, but not understanding the sensitivity of his words. Arrogance for him to have his showboat.
I think this is a personal attack on Mr. King. Can you just answer his question, please?
I've already answered it, but he's got to understand when he talks with language like that, fire sale is dangerous and inappropriate. This isn't the time for him just to try to be clever. Sensitivity is important. And when you talk in that language, that is really not on.
Declan, do you want to come in?
So it's partly a similar point. We do have to be careful. We've got tenants, and there's no proposal at the moment to kind of remove that tenancy from them. We've just got to be careful about kind of not making ourselves unattractive as a sort of a landlord, but also kind of creating concern with the sort of the tenants we've got at the moment. I mean, I don't know whether this helps, but we can't sell assets to cut council tax. You know, you've got a sort of a capital revenue kind of crossover. All you can do is actually, if you were to close assets, which, you know, in truth again is just part of a normal running of an authority, you do have to look at your assets. It tends to be people who deliver services rather than kind of the sort of the necessary, that sort of fixed physical location. So we've got to be open to kind of looking to change our estate, whether it's an income earning estate or another, or just a sort of the normal corporate estate. But we do really need to be careful to be clear that, you know, that's always going to be done in a very sort of planned, controlled way, so that we're not going to sort of impinge the rights of tenants or create an unnecessary uncertainty with those tenants, because, you know, they pay us an amount and they've got kind of a contract to fall back on as well.
Thanks, Declan. I think that was a clarity you were asking from the leader, so thank you for that. Any? Very quickly, then I'll go to Mr. Innes.
Yeah, no, I completely, you know, the point is, Chair, scrutiny is about asking the difficult questions. May not be the questions you want us to ask. I'll make the points you want me to make, Mr. Harrison, but I'll make the points that my residents, my voters, make to me about you and your party. Thanks very much.
Mr. Innes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to page 9, I think it is, of your report, which is the performance on completion of projects. Could you just give us some indication as to why only 50% of the projects were completed 24-25?
Yeah, some of it's just the nature of those projects. Yeah, in terms of they run it, you know, as you know, from any kind of maybe construction project, yeah, that you can sometimes come up against kind of issues that mean that, yeah, in terms of with the best planning in the world, that sometimes, yeah, it carries you over into the next financial year. I think some of the, in terms of the kind of metrics that we provided kind of demonstrated that, and that we were expecting some kind of capital receipts and returns, yeah, which fundamentally will fall into this financial year rather than the previous year. So yeah, I think what demonstrates that they're well managed, but sometimes they're just not delivered, yeah, quite within the financial year that we're expecting them to be.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. we're traditionally very poor in the UK at delivering projects. What is it that we're going to change to make sure that in this year and future years we manage to deliver projects on time? Mr. King referred to the adult project, the Adulton skip, which took, in effect, will take 3 years to complete. And it's been generally accepted. We don't have that time anymore. We've got to identify projects and move forward quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest it may be one of the things that, the external organisation that's coming in may look at, and they may be able to provide us with some suggestions, as to how we can better manage our projects and deliver on time, and to kind of realise those benefits as expected. I think we sometimes have resourcing challenges. We sometimes, it takes longer in terms of procurement, some of our kind of, legal positions on things. So, as everyone's acutely aware of, it does feel like sometimes it takes longer within our sector than it does than other sectors.
I think I agree with you, Mr. China, places like that can build a huge railway in months, and we take forever. I think what we've picked up, that we're in a framework they have to operate. BATs can stop us operating, newts can stop us operating, cost us a fortune. We hit a main that we don't know about. And I think it's all those things there that just block this country from developing. So I think I'm with you with that as well. Yeah. Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I'm really quite passionate about this. If we're in business, we get it done. This is a business. This, whether we like it or not, it's a business, and we get it done. And we don't have excuses. If we don't get it done, our customers are let down. If we don't get it done here, our residents are let down. So I think that's a fundamental issue that I'm identifying since walking into the council 4 months ago, is that we need to up the urgency of everything that we do. And I think the general acceptance around this table is we need to really start pushing as much as we can financially in what we're doing, in what we're giving to our residents. We need to really question, how do we get the delivery better, the timing better, etc. It's just a general comment. I don't expect an answer to that, but it's just a general observation I've got since walking in 4 months ago.
I couldn't agree more with you. Yeah, exactly. Is there anything you wanted to add or anything?
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I probably couldn't agree more. So, it's essentially, for my team, it's all about delivering services for the residents, and also for our internal service colleagues, who I see very much as our clients as well. So it's just a combination of just working a lot more collaboratively with them, getting my team and the services involved with projects earlier on, and kind of identifying clear programs of work and budget and timescales. And if there are any issues, identifying them early on and working out how we can work through them. Obviously, it's very early days for my good self, but I have identified where we need some additional resource to support the team. And it's a combination of bringing all those things together, just so we can work in a more efficient way. Hopefully, get more out of the portfolio.
We will come down to resources and the cost of it, don't we? Any other questions from anybody on this? No, thank you, Lucy and Karen. So the recommendation is to note and comment on the report, which we have done. Thank you. On to item 10, investing in leadership programmes, annual performance update, pages 55 to 94. This is the 2024-2025, and Lucy, you're still staying here, and Karen as well, so over to you.
Okay, thank you. And obviously there's a clear linkage with the corporate asset management plan that I've just presented to you, but this report specifically focuses on the Investing in Leicestershire programme and the performance of that portfolio, its contribution to the strategic goals and the outlook for future investments. So it sets out in terms of the background of ILP, which was established in 2023, which evolved from the corporate asset investment fund, and fundamentally its purpose is to generate income and capital growth in order to support frontline services, whilst also addressing areas of economic and social market failure. The portfolio is managed by an advisory board and overseen by the Director of Resources. So it sets out our performance as of 31st of March 2025, with the total value of the portfolio standing at £292.3 million, and then it breaks that down across the various different kind of assets that we hold. So our rural estate, offices, industrial, and then our development properties. And then also £60.5 million in diversified investments such as pooled property, private debt, infrastructure and bank risk share funds. In terms of that financial performance, the portfolio generated a net income of 8.6 million in 24-25, which was up from the 7.6 million the previous year. The direct property portfolio delivered a return of 9.5%, outperforming the market benchmark of 7.7%, and our diversified investments contributed an income return of 8.1%. We made a contribution to the sinking fund of £2.8 million to support future maintenance across the portfolio. Some of the sector highlights within the report. So for the rural sector, we achieved a 17.4% return, which was driven by capital growth from development potential. The office sector maintained strong occupancy, which is excellent within the current market, and delivered a 7% return. Our industrial sector had stabilised after some market corrections with a 5.4% return, and our development sector is still in recovery but expected to improve as projects progress. In terms of the diversifier investments, the cover report at the request of the Commission includes detailed information on the diversifier investments, and we can finance colleagues are happy to take questions on that. But ultimately, our diversifiers help reduce risk and provide income when local property markets are under pressure. The current allocation is 79% direct property and 21% diversifiers, which is a shift from the target of the 67% and 33% split, and plans are in place to rebalance that through new investments in private debt and bank risk share strategies. It outlines our major projects and developments, namely Leaders Farm, Airfield and Solar Farm, and our strategic sites of Lutterworth East and the M69 junction to Stony Stanton. In terms of operationally, rent arrears fell to 981,000 with active debt recovery in place. Our lease renewals and rent reviews delivered uplifts across the rural and commercial portfolios, and unfortunately voids increased slightly but remain manageable at 5.6%. Our rural estate, which makes up a significant proportion of the portfolio, we delivered £133,000 uplift on our rent reviews in the autumn across 43 notices. There were 25 notices in the spring. We've got a compliance audit underway with significant investment planned across the rural estate. There's a lot of work underway around the legacy debt, and unfortunately with some legal action against some of our tenants in relation to that. And we're currently developing, for starting discussion at the next ILT board at the end of September, the strategy for the rural estate, so we can make sure we've got resilience and alignment with the strategic goals of the council. Sets out the challenges and opportunities, again, just those recruitment challenges we've had, some of the market volatility and interest rate impacts, and the fact that we've got to need to rebalance the portfolio towards diversifiers. But ultimately, we need to continue our focus on value for money and the strategic alignment. So in conclusion, in summary, the ILP continues to deliver strong financial returns and strategic value, and it remains a vital tool in supporting Leicestershire's services, infrastructure and economic development. And the Scrutiny Commission's feedback will be reported to Cabinet on the 28th of October 2025. Karen, myself and Bhulesh, who looks after the investments for us, are happy to take any questions or comments that you've got.
Thanks, Lucy. Mr. Harrison's left the meeting, so I can't ask him if there's anything he wants to add. So any questions from members? Dr. Bloxham?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you say strong financial returns, but the performance for most of them actually looks pretty poor. It's boosted up by the revaluation of the farms that the council owns. But a lot of the other stuff isn't that great. I mean, 2 of the property funds have been wound up for capital losses. They only make a tiny profit over the whole 10 years if you include income. Doesn't seem that can really be classed as strong financial returns. So that's the first point. The second point is when it's talking about those property funds, I think we should be honest. If things have gone badly, we need to be honest about how badly they've done. And I don't think we're doing that here. And this is on page 60. We're comparing their total return against cash. The property is much, much riskier than cash. So there should be a risk premium. So comparing risky property funds with the performance of cash and then getting only a minimal outperformance, that's not a good thing. The third point is more about the strategy. So we've got 231 million in direct property assets. And then we've got the diversifiers, which are there to reduce risk by diversity. But, you know, a big chunk of that is in property funds. I mean, we already own 231 million in property. It doesn't seem that we're getting much diversity from that. I mean, the report talks about we're getting geographical spread, you know, so if the local Leicestershire market's doing badly and it's doing great in Kent or whatever, there's going to be a little bit of divergence. But there's investments out there that would have much more diversity. I mean, I've spoken to Declan in the past about shares, but over the long term, equities perform much better than property. There's some correlation between them, but at the same time, there's less correlation with direct property than there would be with property funds. So it seems like that should be something we should be looking at. You know, they're more volatile in the short term, but over the long term, they tend to do much better. And the final point is just about the rural estate. They've had massive rent increases in the last couple of years to do with the revaluations. It seems unfair that if we're keeping that land, part of it is we've got a custodianship attitude to it. So we're not looking to maximise returns. We're looking to keep a good, strong, thriving rural community. So I'm not sure we should be basing their rent on whether we can build houses on the land, because that's not something we want to be concreting over Leicestershire. And if we do want to increase people's farmers' rents by such massive amounts, maybe in the future we can consider phasing those rent increases in rather than hitting them with massive, you know, if it's over 10%, say, phase it in over 2 years would be a suggestion. Thanks.
Who wants to pick those questions up? Or who's going to start?
I'll try with the pooled property investments to begin with. I think that we were probably a little bit unfortunate in the sense that these were forced liquidations. So, you know, if we were in a position to hold them, we would have held them. There is a risk inherent in holding pooled property positions where you're not in direct control of how the fund operates. So if there are enough liquidations, enough investors wanting to redeem, then the funds can get liquidated, as we've seen in 2 cases here. Important to note that, you know, Leicestershire as a fund would not have wanted this to happen. It just tended to happen at the wrong time, if you like. We'd invested in a period when interest rates were relatively low. People wanted to redeem when interest rates were relatively high, therefore capital values were depressed at the time. So it's unfortunate it happened in that one instance with the Lothbury fund. The other fund was one that was being redeemed in a similar manner. We were not deemed to be an investor. You'd have to be a pension fund to stay invested. So in another case where we were unlucky in that respect.
But just to be clear, the reason we had those issues is because property is a very illiquid asset. So you've got higher liquidity risk there. So that's something we've got in our existing estate, which is another reason why something that's designated as a diversifier would be better than something that doesn't share the same risks as the other 231 million.
I tend to agree. So what we're looking at now is a wider group of diversifiers. I think there's a report coming to the next ILP advisory board. So we're taking on board some of those comments you've made.
That's good to hear. Will equities be a part of that
mix?
It's one of the 7 new types that we're looking to discuss on that day. Yes.
Mr. Piper.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, who got through the other bits?
Yeah, can I just come back on the rural estate? Yeah, so the rental increases, yeah, which are part of just those tenancy agreements, are actually based on the kind of market rents. And we've done 2 recently, so there were a number that were due in the autumn of 2024 and also in the spring of 2025. The average for the autumn was £4.2 thousand, and for the spring was 1,500. So I wouldn't suggest that they were massive increases for those farmers.
So were they as percentages in what they were previously paying?
Yeah, so they'd be different across the different. Yeah. So yeah, could have been anything. Yeah, from a very small increase, yeah, to a larger increase of kind of 20-30%. But as I say, the averages were still low increases across the board.
Right, and could it be considered as policy for the future to make a suggestion to Cabinet that if it is going to be 20 or 30% increase, that it is phased in, because
Yes,
that is a big thing to be hit with in quite a low margin industry.
Yeah, so we did allow phasing. Yeah, in if people approach us, people appointed their own kind of advisors to be able to help them, and yeah, in some cases we did kind of consult and negotiate on the phasing of those.
Is there any other points not being covered? Yep. If you just remind.
There was the apples and oranges issue that we're comparing property here with cash, which I suspect has been done to make the poor performance look better than it should have been. I don't think we should be doing that sort of thing in reports. Yeah, sorry. I think we've already dealt with the performance and the diversifiers.
So just on the apples and oranges piece, you're right in terms of that risk comparison. It's not a fair comparison on risk. All it's trying to do is if we go back to when the sort of pool property funds were first invested in, like a decade ago, it was a time when we're getting very poor returns on sort of the normal bank lending that we do is below the rate of inflation. So we're actually having a sort of capital eroded. So that's, I suppose that was the genesis of sort of doing those pooled properties, where it was to boost the returns above of cash. But you're right, it's not trying to sort of pass it off that it's a good return just because it beats cash, because it should beat cash significantly if you can sort of take into account that risk. Where I do think it is a fair comparison is, I suppose, it's just setting it where that investment has performed. It's obviously not met its targets, so it is a disappointing investment, but at the same time we haven't lost capital and we have made a sort of a small return, so it's not a complete disaster at end either. So it's more trying to hark back to why we invested it initially, but also to just sort of set it in the sort of scheme of it's a poorly performing investment, but actually it wasn't a disaster, it's just I suppose poorly performing, and that's kind of a rating that we can kind of give it.
Do you still clarify, would you still summarise the report as strong financial returns based on those things?
It's obviously, it's mixed. If you go down into sort of individual investment, which you get in any investment fund, some are poor, some are really, really, really good. So overall in the mix, if you look at just that sort of headline figure, it's good. But as you pointed out, that's very much driven by the sort of the capital appreciation of the rural estate. But so on the headline it is. But if you look at individual investments, it's a mixed bag, which it's always going to be.
Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to duplicate in some respects what Dr. Bloxham's just said, because I didn't realise he was going to say it. In terms of strong financial returns, you say we've got a fund of 292 million, and which we've made this year 8.6 million. That's a return of 2.9 million. That's not, sorry, 2.9%. Thank you. That's not what I'd call a strong financial return. I'm getting more than that on investing in cash. My own personal investments outperform you phenomenally. And you have access to institutional funds, I presume. I don't. I only have access to retail funds. So I would have thought that your performance should at least be as good as mine. And I'm just a punter who looks at the internet. Going on a bit further, looking at the internet, I've just had a quick look, and I've just found on one of the building societies, they're offering 4.8% return, which is substantially more than your strong financial returns. In respect to the farmers' rents, which was something which I also was looking into, I believe that part of the problem was that the rents and the valuation weren't done for a number of years, and that's what caused a sudden increase. Whereas better housekeeping would have been to have done that valuation and the rent increase every year or every 2 years, perhaps, possibly even every 3 years. And that would have brought more money into the council over the past few years rather than just a sudden increase. So that suggests a little bit of mismanagement as well. And I think that's all I've got at the moment. But I think the fact that I can outperform your performance on retail funds, not being a financial expert or an investment expert, is rather stunning.
I think the 2.9% is correct in the round. It is the percentage return on income over the whole 292 million, but we do have within that 292 million about nearly half, 47% of that fund is development or rural, and we both know that both of those areas, well, the development doesn't return us anything until they're built, and the rural has a very meagre income return. So if you discount both of those two areas, your income return, excluding the development and the rural, is about 5.4%. So not great, but a lot better than the 2.9.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can I just comment on that at the moment? So you're talking about 5%, 5.4% on if you only take half of it, which is a valid point. I have to agree. But you can get 4.8% on the internet today by putting it to the building society.
Yes, that is a fair point, and it is probably correct on today's dates. But we're also building for capital returns in the future. So we've definitely had capital returns within the rural estate during the year, and the development areas will also, once they're up and running and we've got tenants in, hopefully contribute to total returns, which is what we're really after over the long term.
Yeah, but we've already discounted the fact of the development and the rural, and we've taken there you said 5.4% on the balance. Now, if you can get 4.8%, 5.8 is not a particularly strong financial return. The other question which I meant to throw in earlier was, of these managers that are managing the different funds, like get the name now, not the one that went sideways, Hermes and Threadneedle, what are their charges as a percentage of the fund?
I don't have the management fees at hand, but we can definitely get them back to you. To the earlier point about capital returns, though, so on the direct estate there was a 6.6% capital return in the year, so that does bring us up a fair amount on top of the income returns as well.
Anything else? To come back on, Mr. Piper.
No, I don't think that really answers the question, really, does it?
You want to ask it in a different way?
Yeah. No, I just think the 2.9%, albeit 5.4 if you exclude the development and the rural, is, well, if I can't perform it, why can't you?
I suppose it's the amount we're looking at. There's limits, isn't there?
Yes, but on the bigger amounts, you should get bigger returns and lower management fees. So it's one of these things that the rich get richer, and I'm not rich.
If I can just on the, I suppose there's always cares looking at individual years, and you build in society accounts. They're going to cap out at that's the maximum return you can get. So we are going to expect more volatility in a portfolio like this. So some years you're going to do better, some years you're going to do an awful lot better, and some years you're going to do a bit worse. But as the point Bill Lester was making at the end is kind of the 2.9 is just the revenue return side of things. You've also got the capital growth, which again, if you think of a bank or building side, the reason they can pay the returns they do is a mixture of sort of capital and revenue. So that's a like with like comparison for 24-25, and it was an exceptional year because of the farm land increase. The total return was 9.5%. Now, like I say, we are going to see more volatility in our portfolio than standard. So 9.5 is more than what we normally aim for. It's really been juiced up by the rural returns, but we would expect on a sort of a 3-5 year basis to beat, bank or building society rates comfortably.
Yeah, I agree that sorry.
Go ahead.
I agree that equities are far more profitable than building society rates. And in fact, there are financial institutions that predict that even if you reinvest your dividend or your interest on building society rates, you'll never keep up with inflation. The only way that really produces return is long-term in equities, which is higher risk. And indeed, I heard this morning from a friend of mine of a particular local government pension scheme, which has invested directly into a company, a fairly new company, and is getting a 12% per annum return on that one investment. And one presumes that because that's a pension fund, it's getting some tax advantages on it, even since Gordon Brown took away the ACT.
I don't know who's on the board now. Joe's just said it's 5 cabinet members on the ILP board, so I don't know who's actually on there for the administration currently, but you have the potential to feed into those cabinet members your thoughts, but it's from the cabinet, people say. Yeah, I'm getting the sense that members might like to have a bit more detail about this and how it actually, so it might be something that we can, rather than just having the annual report on here, something that we can have as an agenda item we can discuss the agenda planning first, sort of a bit more deep dive if members are interested in understanding a little bit more. Is that something they would? Yeah. Okay, we'll get that on the agenda at some point. Mr. King.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm not going to go over what's just been mentioned, but I think we have, having been a scrutiny for this item previously, in previous years, I think it's fair to say members have raised concerns about performance previously, but again, you're just looking at 1 year snapshots, it's kind of difficult. But the drag does seem to be being caused by the rural estate. I'd certainly welcome that deep dive. What I did want to say, Chair, I find it very, very unacceptable that not a single member of the cabinet or the board of ILP is here to actually take questions or provide answers. The leader sloughed off before the beginning of this item, and there isn't a single member of the cabinet present, and I think it's absolutely disgraceful. They can't even be bothered to show up accept it's not decisions they may have been involved in, but they need to also understand what the concerns of members are about this. I think looking at the big picture on this, I think it is important because it's not just about financial return, it's also delivering, as mentioned earlier, investment in infrastructure, providing business units, office space, things like that, as well as bringing forward development land for development for homes, which we do need, unfortunately, across Leicestershire. And there are schemes that are at different levels of development. So I think that's where it is. So it's not as good as I think we'd like it to be, but it's in, and I think that's that will be my feedback, certainly to officers and to members of the cabinet who sit on this board. That I'd be very concerned about the council directly investing into equities. I think that will be a very, very dubious thing to do if the council directly invested in an equity holding as part of this. Pensions is a completely separate issue and a very, very complicated matter. I understand Mr. Piper's comment, but that's not the sort of, and going forward, that's certainly not what would be possible anyway under the new regime that Fit for the Future is going to deliver. But we're not here to talk about pensions this morning, Chair. Thank you.
If I can come back on that, please, Chair. I didn't suggest that we invested into direct into equities. The investing direct into equities is somewhat more of a risky proposition. I just use that as an example of what another county council was doing.
I didn't say you did. Thank you.
Dr. Bloxham?
Sorry, I did say we should invest in equities. And I think we should, because over the long term, they have a much better return than any other asset class. So unless we're planning to sell up in the next couple of years, then there's no reason not to invest in equities. Short-term volatility, even if you invested in your shares in 2007, just before the financial crash, you would still have made a massive profit by now, as long as you hold on to them for long enough. So yes, we should invest in equities. I'm not suggesting we put 290 million in equities. I'm thinking a couple of these property funds, which run pretty poorly, would be better off in equities. So 20 million would represent 7% of the total portfolio. I really don't see a problem with that.
That's maybe something that internal experts, when they come in, might pick up some of those suggestions. Okay, any other comments or questions on this paper? Okay, so we're asked to note this report. Okay, on to item 11, the East Midlands Shared Service Annual Performance Update, 24-25, pages 95 to 110. Elaine Simpson, thank you, Lucy and Karen. Elaine Simpson, Head of East Midlands Shared Services, will present this item. Just let her get settled, then we'll hand over to Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, today I'll be presenting the annual service and performance overview for East Midlands Shared Services for 2024-25, which will cover the purpose and background of East Midlands Shared Services, priorities and financial performance, technology developments, service centre performance and highlights, and the latest audit outcomes. East Midlands Shared Services, also known as EMS, was established as a partnership between Nottingham City Council and Leicestershire County Council to deliver shared HR, payroll and finance services. The strategic priorities run across 6 main areas designed to provide a stable service with a focus on optimisation and development. And those areas are broken down into the customer, operations, people, finance, technology and growth. The 2024-25 financial performance, and the specifics are detailed within the report. It shows of the £5.17 million budget was an underspend of £478,000. That resulted in a reimbursement to each partner of £239,000. The outturn did include multiple factors, but the main items being the pay award, which was £63,000 under the approved budget provision, as well as some temporary held vacancies across the service. Overall, the service is in a stable position to deliver services within expectation for the coming financial year, with most of those vacancies previously noted now filled or in progress. Performance in the year was maintained despite significant changes in several leadership positions, which are also detailed in the report. And the strategic plan for 2025 to 29, which underpins all of the services goals, has been agreed and endorsed, and the details of that strategic plan are included at the end of the report in Appendix A. The customer service and new ticketing platform, Fresh Service, was procured and implemented, and with around 118,000 help desk tickets processed in the year, it is really important to make sure that the right platform is in place to filter, categorise, assign such a high volume of tickets and inbound queries. The customer satisfaction feedback rate remains low. Every inquiry received through the service is asked for feedback on their opinion of the service following the resolution of their query. However, that response rate is still less than 1%. An additional customer survey was recently conducted and directed at the service users this year to try and obtain a wider view of the opinion of the service from its users. It generated 178 responses, which is still quite low considering the number of employees it was extended to, but it did provide some constructive feedback to areas that we could improve on. The overall opinion was moderate to satisfactory, with the main issues being around access to information and self-service culture resistance. But it has to be said that the knowledge of the agents and the consistency of the service did score well. Within technology, a review of the Oracle support service provider has taken place. There are some areas of improvement that were highlighted and they are being managed. Those issues were largely due to a drop in resources within the supplier, which reduced response rate across multiple areas for various change requests that the service areas are submitted. When they are time sensitive, you can imagine that does cause a good degree of frustration. There is now a new post in place to specifically manage that relationship and its performance, which has also allowed for some space for the current team to take on some of those system developments themselves and reduce the reliance upon that service provider for some of those technological changes. The contract for this service is due to expire in February 26, following the decision to extend the contract to ensure that the capacity required for the multiple stakeholders needed to procure that process was available. So that process to procure a replacement provider will begin after February 2026. Oracle Guided Learning was deployed, or OGL. This technology allows for on-screen prompts and step-by-step instructions that help people navigate through various system processes in real time. Fusion Data Intelligence was also deployed. This is a data analytics module that allows for a suite of reporting capabilities to improve visibility of data and statistics. And the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI Health Check, passed 977 of the 1,000 tests, which was a really good result. And EMS are now working with LCC IT colleagues to push forward with the use of the multi-factor authentication for additional security across all users. An enhanced back system was procured, providing secure electronic verification of customer and supplier bank details and providing better security and a simplified experience for end users. And a new dialer system was implemented to increase the volume of customers contacted for payment. Additional functionality is also in the pipeline, which includes the ability for a customer to make a payment via their telephone keypad without the need to speak to an agent if they so wish to do so. And also the ability to send reminders via text message with links to payment platforms where the customer agrees to that method of contact. Paperless direct debit solution, which is in its final stage of testing, moving away from a paper solution, will reduce the reliance on print and post and reduce those costs in those areas, as well as removing the manual element of setting those up in the system and allow for future initiatives to increase the number of customers who pay by direct debit. So to provide some context around the working volumes in the service across 2024-25, the Employee Service Centre, or the ESC, processed 173,000 payroll payments with an error rate of less than 1%, and 380,000 pension payments. There were 14,000 DBS checks carried out and 2,203 recruitment adverts, with 38,000 inbound queries resolved at a rate of 96.9 within SLA. The Finance Service Centre set up 3,740 new suppliers for LCC with 91% within SLA. 159,000 LCC supplier payments were made, a total value of 248 million. 93.5 of those were paid within the statutory 30 days. There was a 12.8 million year-on-year reduction in past due debt through sundry debt recovery services, highlighting the improvements in making sure customers are paying on time. And there were 79,000 inbound queries into that service, resolved 89% within SLA. So the audit was completed this year with moderate assurance, and that was the overall opinion from internal audit. The definition for moderate assurance is generally a sound system of internal controls designed to achieve the organisation's objectives. It is worth noting that the recommendations made were low priority and the audit was very thorough and did look at a significant amount of data, with noted improvements across all service areas. Following a period of resource issues within NCC, who provide the internal audit service, that was completed with I think a couple of weeks delay, but almost on time, with agreed dates for this year's audit also now in place. So the future strategic focus of the service is to expand the service and enhance the customer experience wherever possible, invest in AI and automations, strengthen data security and system security, ensure professional training and qualifications are made available where appropriate for the team, and continue to develop the EMS brand and ensure that the team are engaged in contributing towards all of those improvements that we're trying to make. There is a table of improvements projects that were completed in 2024-25. They are included within the report. Within there is the training and development, process improvements, and the business continuity plan. The business continuity plan key processes have been dry run tested, including remote access to the Oracle Fusion system outside of the council service system, and a rerun of the previous month's payroll, which is one of the agreed processes in there. Critical reports such as supplier verified and active bank accounts, details required for emergency use in the absence of the system are stored securely within Resilience Direct, along with action cards for each process and the business continuity plan itself. Work has also started on benchmarking the service delivery against other local authorities. In the absence of a suitable benchmarking service, despite our best efforts to find one, EMS now plans to approach other local authorities through contacts made in local government user groups to try and agree some key metrics that we can then compare against performance against other local authorities. As and when the opportunity presents itself, you know, those benchmarking services will be expanded, those key metrics will be expanded. I do appreciate it's all well and good to sit here and talk about how, you know, the volume and how much has been created and the amount of work that the service does, but it is something that we want to do, is to be able to benchmark against other service deliverables as well, so that we can provide some confidence that the service being provided is actually value for money. Okay, so whilst a service of that size and complexity doesn't come without its challenges, and there is still quite a lot of work to do, it has been a successful year for the service, and it continues to look forward as to how it can best serve both partners, its customers and suppliers.
Thank you. Questions? Were you? Yep.
Some good figures there, and well done. Do we look at best practice in business? I have had a lot of experience of working on commerce automation, the improvements through commerce automation, and how we deal with suppliers on that, because it's not just a benefit for us, but it's a benefit for suppliers. And if we're giving a benefit to suppliers, we should expect something back from those suppliers. So we, as a business, would look at some additional rebates or whatever. So that's an important aspect to look at as well if you're looking at the full commerce automation.
Yeah, absolutely. Those things are all included within the plan. Leicestershire currently have an early payment settlement, which is exactly what you talk about. So suppliers can get paid early for a slight rebate, which creates a little bit of an income for the council. In addition, the no PO, no pay policy is live now. So we push that responsibility back onto the supplier to make sure that their invoices are valid. And if they're not valid, they're rejected. It just cuts down on the admin time, and also make sure that, you know, the spend controls are in place, because there's a purchase order raised for every invoice that comes through the door. There are exceptions, but they are exceptions and not the rule.
Sure. This is a bit cheeky, but I'll ask it anyway. 30 days payment is extremely short. If we're paying within 30 days. Now, there is a big discussion about small suppliers, large suppliers. Should we, you know, but from a cash point of view, definitely in business, the number of days is a lot longer than 30 days. And now this may be a government instruction or a policy or whatever, but I just thought I'd point that out.
Yep, there are multiple payment terms in place, all the way from immediate to beyond 30 days. There is a statutory requirement that all trade suppliers are paid within 30 days. The payments that go through the service go way beyond just trade suppliers. You know, they include benefit payments, pension payments, lots of things that don't fall into that bracket. But we are very conscious that statutory requirement is met across the board wherever it's possible.
Okay, Mr. Poland next.
Thank you, Chair. I probably it's not a declaration of interest, but I was on EMS for about 9 months prior to the election, so been to a few meetings on this during that time. I know sort of last winter, I forget exactly when it was, we had some difficulties sort of communicating with Nottingham City Council because of changes in management, I think it was, from memory. Have things settled down a little bit there, and is communications, or are communications better now than they were then? That's my first question. And second one is to do with the very low response rate from feedback from staff. Can we deem anything from the fact that people don't want to actually feedback? So what I mean by that is people who usually do feedback on these things are people who are really unhappy with the system, or I suppose if they were thoroughly delighted with the system, they might as well. But if you're sort of just using it and it's functional and it's done what I want it to do, and that's that, I might not think it's worth my time feeding back one way or the other. So can we deem actually that there's a sort of an underlying general contentment from staff? Because if there wasn't, the response rates would be higher. And I guess the second part to that question, if we are concerned in that regard, have we thought about doing any more proactively going to staff who reviews the system and asking them questions rather than just asking them to volunteer to feed it back? If you see what I mean.
So your first question around communication from Nottingham on the audit, yes, it did improve. It was difficult last year. The audit did get completed, and they have agreed the dates for this year's audit. If it happens in line with what they've communicated, everything will be fine. But obviously, we're not in that audit period yet. It's due to start this month. So if they keep to their word, then we should be okay for this year's audit. But that remains to be seen at this moment in time. Your second question, yes, there is an assumption that no feedback is good feedback. That's what we would like to think. People generally only feedback when they're, super upset or happy with something. But we don't want to presume that, there are a lot of forums and a lot of areas where we do raise this with senior managers and heads of service to say, what is your opinion of the service? What's the feedback? What's the noise? If you're hearing any noise, let us know. Also letting them know what's available to people if they're not happy with various services. So, and we do put it out there, that we want people to engage with us. We want the feedback, whether it's good or bad, so that we can develop that service, because ultimately it is a service, and it's good to know that you're providing what people want and need. So yeah, there's still some more work to do. That additional survey that was conducted is probably, whilst it's still low, is the most number of feedbacks that there has been so far, and it was plugged significantly through all the heads of service across Nottingham and Leicestershire as well. So we do continue to try, and hopefully might come up with some ways to make it easier for people to give feedback. So hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Dr. Bloxham.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, really good report, nice and concise, and lots of underspends in it, which is good. Everyone else could learn a lot from that. Just the AI thing. Can you give any more detail on what stage you're at with that, or the sort of scope of it? Is it quite a major project that we might see some, big reductions in staffing costs, for example?
It's across multiple areas. So a lot of the reporting now is automated and fed in from the Fusion Analytics data, whereas people used to spend hours putting reports together. They can be done in a much shorter period of time now. The validation of invoices is all touch-free. So somebody will send a supplier invoice via email. That is then validated electronically, fed into the system, so that all that remains is to receipt that invoice against a purchase order and pay it, or deal with something if there's an exception. The exceptions are exactly that. There's a new training program or apprenticeship that's made available to everyone around artificial intelligence. So it's around the use of Microsoft Copilot, improving communications, standardizing processes. Oracle guided learning again is another one that provides on-screen prompts, real-time guidance for people so they don't have to go and find how to do a process. It's there on the screen for them. So it's all about enhancing that experience for people and utilising that technology, at the same time making sure that the information governance is on board all the way, that all the policies are adhered to. I think, if I'm honest, we've only just started scratching the surface with what's available, but it's definitely at the forefront and a focus of what we look at across all of the service.
So do you foresee potential for staffing cuts, for example?
It's hard to say because, well, ultimately yes, because that's what the aim is, to kind of cut the cost. But the staffing, the improvements are not always a cut in costs. They're to improve the accuracy of the data and the process. They're to allow people to maybe work on other projects that they don't have time for now because they're too busy, you know, doing the daily do. And there's a lot of benefits to that, improving the experience for the customer. But ultimately, it is to gain efficiencies and put the service in a position where, because of the top technology that is involved, rather than cutting the costs and the staff, it can provide more services without costing more, because it's created that capacity to be able to take on that extra work.
Thank you.
Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I think my feedback as a member of EMSS, I think it's actually very efficient and very effective. As you say, I think there's probably more it could do. My question is really about the possible effect of LGR. And the reason I'm asking that, on Friday, the combined districts of Leicestershire announced that they don't see any scope for the city to expand into the county, which I don't disagree with. But their view is that they think a three, a north, a middle, and a south, is the way forward. If that's the case, then I understand you won't be able to give me a full answer here, but I'm just trying to understand: is that all those sorts of issues being looked at as to whether this very efficient system, which is a joint partnership between Nottingham City Council and Leicestershire, is that going to be a risk to this sort of service if there was a three system in place? And would that be an out the window, and then we'd have to start again from scratch using one of their systems? I'm just trying to understand where we'd be left, or where this would be, this sort of service would be left if the government decided a three. I appreciate you can't tell me that, but in some respects, but I'm just concerned that this is a risk. And given what we talked about earlier, Chair, about the financial instability of the authority at the moment, the lack of leadership and lack of clarity from the leader and his cabinet as to what their plans are for the MTFS, this does seem to be a very, very significant issue. So I'm just wondering if you're able to shed any light about what LGR might mean for this type of service. Thank you.
I'll start, and then Elaine might add some specifics. But I think it's fair that we are looking at what the potential impacts of LGR could be on EMS, and it is difficult at the moment without kind of knowing what that preferred scenario or preferred option or government decision might be. But because EMS is a kind of transactional service, some of the LGR options might reduce some of the transactional volume going through EMS, although obviously we've also got the Nottingham perspective as well. But equally, unitary authorities do have other transactional volume that the county currently doesn't have. I'm thinking of revs and bends, for instance. So there could be opportunities there for EMS from that scenario, for instance. So it is something that we're working through, and I think there are opportunities as well as some challenges that we'll need to work through once we understand kind of what the preferred options might be. But Elaine might have some more specifics as well.
Yeah, we have given it some thought, but like Simone said, it is difficult without knowing the specifics, but we've tried to create a list of things that we need to consider and how we can best prepare for those. So, potential merging in staffing structures, the ownership of the process, increases in some processes, decrease in others, completely new processes, new technology or systems that those processes run on that are not currently part of the EMS operation, you know, new contractual and service level agreements, quite a vast list really of all the things and areas that we can imagine it would impact the service as and when that happens. All I can say is that there will be, you know, a dedicated project team to make sure that, you know, we work through those things properly to make sure that the service delivery remains on track as best as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Chair. In a previous life, I ran a taxi company, and I was honoured by being given a few contracts from the LCC, which was paid for through EMS. One of the things which found was very confusing was that whenever we had a communication from EMS, it said invoices must be sent by email. Whenever we sent them by email, they got lost. And I was told, you should have sent them by post, as in to County Hall. Is that still the case? Because it was so confusing when you get a direct communication saying send them by email, and then they actually got lost if you sent them by email. Has that been fixed? Do you know?
It's not an issue that I'm aware of. We now do not accept paper invoices. There may be one or two that are a real big exception, but there is a dedicated mailboxes for invoices now. It's not just a general email, and that is tied into the invoice validation system program. So missing invoices is not one of the ticket reasons that's, you know, high in volume. It's not anything that I can even recall seeing on there. So I would have to say that it looks like it's resolved, but obviously I wasn't part of the service at that point.
Well, as you say, if they are all now must be and cannot be accepted in paper form, then that sounds as if it's been resolved. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a quick question about paragraph 25, the review of the Oracle support service? Just that bit about overall the performance is below adequate. Can you just shed a bit more? And then obviously it goes on to say that a lower fee uplift and additional services have been offered by the supplier. So can you just give me a little bit more information about that, please?
Yeah, I did touch on it in the performance, but not in too much detail. So there is a managed support service that provides support across the ERP system, which is Oracle Fusion. When we say performance has been, you know, not where it should be, I think maybe a couple of years ago, we were very much in a stabilisation period following the implementation of the system. Whereas now, it is very much about how we can maximise the use of the system and move forward with change requests and utilise that more. So there are more change requests going into that support service now than ever. Obviously, people get frustrated when they don't get a response on time or those projects are not moving along at the timeline that they want it to. So one of the issues was that they had some significant staff shortages at their side, which was creating those delays. As a result of that, that additional post for somebody to come in and manage that contract specifically to make sure they are delivering in line with what's expected, that is an additional resource that wasn't there previously, which also then frees up the existing Oracle manager, who is quite a technical person, to deliver some of those change requests internally without relying on that external service provider. The reduction in the cost is that we've negotiated an extension at a lower rate than what is currently in place, and that will be in place for the duration of the extension, and we expect to go out to procure for that within the next 12 to 18 months.
And just one other point about, I think you did mention this as well, about the contract with Nottingham City is due. Is this due to be renewed, our existing, or is it a running contract that happens every year?
The partnership's a rolling partnership. It doesn't expire as such. The agreement that we were talking about year on year with what they're doing was the internal audit. It's one of the functionalities that's part of their responsibility as part of that partnership agreement.
And how much notice does either side have to give to exit if they wanted to?
I believe it's 18 months, but I would have to double check.
Okay, so quite a while then. Just picking up on Mr. King's point about LGR, if something happened that we needed to get out, it's quite a long lead in, but we would have that time, wouldn't we, if we needed to? Or can you also add local authorities to that? Is that an option as well as a contract or not?
It is within the agreement, and it's a specific process for adding new partners or clients and users into that partnership agreement. So it is within the scope to do that if needed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this report? Okay, so our recommendation is to note this report. Thank you, and thank you, Elaine. Okay, we'll move on to our final item, which is item 12, the Corporate Complaints and Compliments 2024-25, pages 111 to 142. So we welcome back Lucy, Assistant Director of Corporate Resources, will present the report along with Alicia Lanham, Head of Business Support. So I'll just let them settle in and then hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the report focuses on the complaints managed under the Corporate Complaints Procedure, which applies to all services not covered by the statutory complaints process for adult and children's social care. It also includes headline data on statutory complaints and local government social care ombudsman activity. Headline figures: 1,287 corporate complaints were received, which was a 12% decrease from the previous year. 393 compliments, which was a 7% decrease. 67 ombudsman inquiries were received, which was a 20% decrease. 93% of our stage 1 complaints were responded to with a maximum of 40 working days, which was up from 90% last year. You'll see from the report that the key themes, it's not really a term I want to use, but the top service areas for complaints were special educational needs assessment, school and SEN transport, child protection, drainage, and children in need. Sender complaints made up the largest proportion, with 72% of closed cases resulting in a finding of fault. And the most common issues were delays in completing EHCP needs assessments. In response to the high volume of sender complaints, a new communication model was introduced in spring 2025. There's been some investment in locum staff, and a revised assessment model has reduced the average EHCP issuance time from 63.5 weeks in December 24 to 41.3 weeks in May 25. And complaint volumes have decreased quarter on quarter throughout the year. In relation to the Ombudsman performance, 122 inquiries were received, 40 were investigated with 33 upheld, which is an 83% uphold rate. This equates to 4.5 upheld decisions per 100,000 residents, which is better than the average for similar authorities of 5.3. The Council maintained 100% compliance rate with the Ombudsman's recommendations, and remedy payments totaled 21,000, a 22% decrease from the previous year. We've set out some of the learnings and service improvements that we've made in response to complaints, which include a new system for issuing refunds and processing payments, revised transport reimbursement policies, improved communication protocols in our first contact services, and safer school bus stop locations. And these actions demonstrate our commitment to using complaints as a tool for service improvement. In terms of compliments, while they help us to improve, compliments remind us of the value our services bring, with libraries, heritage and museums receiving 50% of all compliments, reflecting their continued positive impact on the community. Work is underway to identify a mechanism to ensure that compliments that are received either directly by services or individuals are captured in order to better represent the positive feedback that we receive. So in conclusion, complaint volumes have reduced last year, response times have improved, and the Council continues to learn from complaints and act on them, and our performance against Ombudsman benchmarks remains strong. We ask the Commission to note the contents of the report and provide any comments or feedback on the analysis and findings. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Comments, Mr. Innes?
Yeah, I think we talked about this the other day. Root cause analysis on complaints, root cause analysis on complaints that are not upheld. How do we manage that? And it brings me back to the point I made earlier, the urgency of dealing with issues. What's the average time? I'd really like to know the average time of dealing with complaints. I think all of us in this room get the experience of a resident coming to us and saying, I haven't had an answer, I haven't had an answer. We send an email and we get one within 5 minutes or within a day. That's not right to me. So some positive action but really, again, the urgency on dealing with complaints, the speed of dealing with complaints really is important for me and the residents that I represent.
Thank you. I might draw in Alicia on the root cause analysis and the work that the team does on that in terms of the urgency of the complaints. Yeah, we do have average times, as you'll appreciate. There are some complaints which take an awful lot longer to investigate than others. You know, our focus is at the moment about potentially using some of the AI technology, because obviously, you know, sometimes we do get, you know, complaints very much of a similar nature where we've you know, where services have responded many times about those, and actually we may be able to use some of the assisted technology actually to be help us to do at least a first draft of a complaint back. Obviously, at the moment, you know, we want to try and do, you know, look into every complaint individually and make sure that we're not just, you know, doing a blanket kind of response, because that's not how we want to operate. But I think there may be some ways that we can look at how we operate and more efficiently. Often that sometimes the delay for us as the corporate services, we're waiting back on the services. So the, you know, the complaints always go, we identify who it's from, what the nature of it is, and it goes out to the services. And sometimes, you know, even for ourselves, finding the right person who's going to be able to kind of respond to that complaint does take a little bit of time. But yeah, we fully appreciate that there's an end service user, yeah, who's waiting, you know, it's taken the time, haven't they, to make that complaint, and we need to respond and react, yeah, in a timely manner. So yeah, it is a key focus for us. In terms of the root cause analysis, Alicia, are you able to?
Yeah, I can touch on a few actually. So all the cases that we get are investigated, and we need to do that to understand whether there's been a fault or whether there hasn't been a fault. And what that investigation will do will unpick what those causes were for the fault to happen in the first case, and it's that identification which drives some of the corrective action which Lucy has mentioned in the report. We are, as well as a service, undertaking some improvement work to kind of strengthen our complaints handling performance. We're reviewing our procedures, looking for quick wins, and then what things we want to do over a longer term. We get a lot of what we categorise as inquiries, so they're not typically complaints. As you can see from the profile of the main report, they've been increasing, and that can take officer time away from, you know, focusing on the complaint. So that's something that we're looking at in terms of, can we get those to go to the right place at the first time to free up the handler's performance, handler's time. We're also looking at our processes and reviewing those to see what we can do to improve them. I know Lucy's alluded to some automation, and that's been part of discussions earlier as well, and developing our reporting metrics and how that might look next year to give that additional insight, which I know has come across the different scrutinies. And again, and looking at sort of training and provision within our service, within the team that handles the complaints, but also the individuals in the organisation that take and play a part in providing the responses, and how we might provide training to those individuals as well.
I think one of the biggest, I think you're absolutely right, that residents can get a response, and it's that communication issue that they think they're in this big black hole and they're never going to get an answer. And I know I pushed really hard in my department when I was lead member about just communication just helps stop those complaints coming through. But yeah, something we definitely need to work on a bit more. Did you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Who is actually responsible for a complaint?
In terms of the response?
In terms of a complaint. So the point I'm trying to make is the department or the person responsible is actually the guy who's either responsible for that team, not the complaint handling team that are pushing it. So when you say we are waiting for a response from a department or whatever, well, that's not acceptable. They should have, they should be pushing that complaint through as quickly as possible, and there should be SLAs to set up and make sure that that's done.
Yeah, I take your point. Yeah, in terms of, to a certain extent, the corporate complaints team is obviously they've got their expertise in managing a range of complaints, and they can look at the responses that come back to make sure that they're kind of fit for purpose. But you're actually right, who's actually responsible within that time scales for responding could well be somebody that's actually sat out within the services, and often we do our very best to make sure that we're prompting them continually to kind of respond and chasing, and we do escalate within the organisation if we've not had the response back from them.
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. 2 observations. One is actually councillors are a good source of complaints. We're not counted in here at all and all the stuff we deal with, because, as has already been alluded to, people do come to us in frustration to sort stuff out for them. But because we're outside of this process, we're not counted. So that's an interesting sort of thought. My other thing is the SEN assessments is frankly quite horrifying. I wasn't realised. I knew it was slow, being a school governor, and in that overspend we were talking about earlier on in the meeting, there is a hidden cost of all of this complaint handling that isn't even counted in there. And I think, frankly, it's a bit. I mean, I know we've had Ofsted come and shout at us about it, and I think it's a real issue, because if your child has to wait a year, in effect, to get their EHCP, that's it. Could be a tremendously important year of their lives and nothing's happening. It's just an observation. Thank you, Chair.
You want to come back on? No, yeah, we're not going to disagree this. So I think it's a lot more involved than we know there's a national shortage of educational psychologists. We can't. It's the reforms and the operating what we're operating on that sometimes out of our hands. But I think it goes down to that communication. But yeah, I agree with you. But I suppose if people are coming to us, we're avoiding a complaint, aren't we? I suppose, which is part of our role to try and help bridge that gap between the council and residents. So, I welcome residents coming to me to help them. James.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the complement side of things, forgive me, this is a simple question. Are these only external? I know there's sort of there's that system within the council, isn't there, where you can complement a co-worker or whatever. Is any of that took into effect? Okay, fine. Just purely out of interest, does anyone use that?
Do actually, yeah. I'm not saying some managers are better at it than others, some co-workers are better at it than others, but yeah, it is quite a nice and easy kind of, there's an app on your screen, so it's just trying to always remember, because we all say thank you to each other, isn't it? But it's a more formal way of doing it. But no, the actual compliments are just from kind of external.
And it's not very often as councillors get a compliment for how we've helped residents either. So I think it is a general thing of this country, isn't it, that we don't compliment people. So one of my questions was about how do we make those improvements to encourage residents to compliment when they do receive a good service, rather than, if they don't, we get those complaints coming in. So I'd like to see a bit more balance, because there is a decrease, isn't there? I wonder why you think that is.
Yeah, no, definitely. We need to make it easy for residents, don't we? In terms of, just have, whether it's going onto the website and actually is it in their face, if you like, to a certain extent. It's probably quite hidden away in terms of the compliments. So maybe, there's lots of things we can do to encourage, to a certain extent, you can use the QR codes and all those kind of things. So it's definitely something we're looking at. Not just about capturing the ones that come in that have gone individually to a member of staff who happens to give them some great service, if you like, or into the departments that we then don't log, but actually about these types of things and learning, I guess, from some of the kind of private sector organisations and other public sector about how they get that engagement, if you like, on the customer service things and be able to, do it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we need to work at. We've all seen those little iPads we go out with a green smiley face if we have good service in it. We just need to replicate that somehow. Okay. Oh, sorry, Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks. No, thanks for this report. It's really helpful. I mean, obviously you can't eliminate complaints completely. There's always going to be just sheer weight of numbers and the complexity of some of the work that our staff undertake. It's always going to be some complaints about issues, but I do think the example you've given of the change in the EHCP, and just relating this back to the first item, clearly the increase, one of the factors in the increase, aside from the national trend, is that we managed to improve under our administration the processing of EHCP applications down from 63.5 weeks to 41.3. Now that, by my reckon, is about a 50% reduction in time. So that's incredibly, that's a really good outcome. Obviously, the upside of that is there's been a boost up of the number of people being recorded with the county council as having a EHCP, and the other side of it, which you can see in the data, is the number of complaints has commensurately gone down also, which is a good thing. And I can relate to that because when I first got elected as a county council in 21, I used to get quite regularly complaint about the SEN process and EHCP assessments and the waiting time. I think I've only had one this year, which is whereas previous years I got several. So that's really testament to the hard work that staff have done. So it does show where people making complaints has had a positive effect. It takes time to change it, but it has been changed, and positively, it's had an impact which has then benefited positively other service users, which I think is a win-win, as they call it. Thank you, Chair.
Anything else? Buxom.
Just a quick one. Do you ever use like mystery shopper type people? There's firms that do mystery stuff, and do you ever get them to come and be residents and go through a process for particular things?
No, yeah, we used to do that. I worked for Tesco for 10 years. It's not something we utilise at the moment in terms of almost like they're testing a processes, aren't they? Yeah, to a sense of whether that's either a service provision or just even trying to, contact us and how easy that is and that sort of. So no, it isn't something we use at the moment, actually.
Do you consider using that?
Yeah. I definitely have a look at it, yeah.
No other comments or questions from members? Okay, so our recommendation is to note the report, and thank you, Alicia and Lucy and Declan for staying as well. Well done. You outstayed till the end. So the next meeting, scheduled meeting, is to take place on the 10th of November. Just want to remind you of a couple of things. So the scrutiny briefing that's been mentioned several times about the council's transferring send in Leicestershire programme, the high needs block funding, is on Wednesday the 15th of October and 12:30. That was something that we requested, so please attend that if you can. And secondly, members will have received an invite to attend an additional meeting of the Scrutiny Commission. This has been provisionally scheduled in members' diaries for the 29th of October, and that will be to consider the council's proposal for local government organisation. So please ensure you've got both of those things in your diaries. On to item 14. As advised, I've got no urgent items, and thank you for everything, and the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for everyone.